Our protagonist of the story died as a nobody, but fate gave him a second chance. Reborn into the body of a nobleman, he inherited a crumbling territory plagued by corruption, starvation, and enemies waiting to strike. Armed with the knowledge of his past life, he's building an army, industrializing his land, and forging a kingdom that will defy the odds. The manhwa starts with a doctor urgently calling out for assistance, instructing the team to place the patient on a ventilator. Meanwhile, Yan gasped, his chest heaving as his heart pounded erratically, on the verge of giving out. Yan, a dedicated industrial mechanical designer for the past 20 years, found himself teetering on the brink of life and death. His tireless work had yielded little more than disappointment and a pervasive loneliness. Now, his relentless drive had finally caught up with him, fracturing his mental health and leaving him in this precarious state. From the moment of his birth, Yan's life had been marked by tragedy. A car accident had claimed his parents, leaving him to navigate the world as an orphan. Despite his hardships, Yan pressed on, clinging to the hope that life would one day acknowledge his efforts and deem him successful. That day, however, never came. After graduating, he secured a low-paying job that barely kept him afloat for 2 decades. His personal life was just as bleak. He had spent his entire life alone, never once experiencing the intimacy of even holding someone's hand. And now it seemed his solitary journey was coming to an end. "Yan, can you hear me?" His closest friend's voice broke through the chaos, filled with worry as they tried to pull him back from the brink. Yet, Yan couldn't help but question the worth of a life like his. Was there any meaning to such an existence? As exhaustion overwhelmed him, he thought, maybe I'll just take a little nap. When Yan opened his eyes, the scene around him was utterly unfamiliar. He found himself in a room of unparalleled luxury, adorned with silk curtains and sparkling crystal lights. The opulence of the setting made him panic momentarily, thinking he had somehow burned through all his savings on an extravagant hospital room. Then, a notification appeared before him. "Welcome to the magical continent of Elda." The realization hit him like a jolt. Could this be one of those isekai scenarios straight out of fiction? In this strange new land, Yan discovered he was now known as Ren. Bewildered, he tried to make sense of his circumstances, but answers were elusive. A week passed in this fantastical world. Ren found himself living a dreamlike life, attended to by servants at every turn. Slowly, he pieced together the truth of his situation. He had indeed died and somehow been reincarnated in the body of Ren Edgar, the third son of the Duke of the Allen Edgar family. Ren had an older sister and brother, both of whom had cared for him deeply since his childhood. "Little brother, eat this. You're growing up and shouldn't go hungry," his sister insisted, placing a lavish spread before him. His brother handed him a sparkling vial, explaining, "This is magic water. It's said to enhance magical power, and I got it at a high price." Even his mother contributed to this nurturing atmosphere, gifting him a new shirt she had made herself and urging him to try it on. As the youngest and most pampered member of the family, Ren lived a life of unparalleled comfort. But as he reveled in this newfound luxury, he couldn't help but feel like a stranger in this world, questioning why he had been granted such blessings. To soothe his doubts, he reasoned that perhaps this was compensation for the hardships he endured in his previous life. The world of Elda was a marvel, where magic powered all aspects of infrastructure. The Corial Empire, the continent's largest human nation, was a melting pot of various races, including elves and dwarves. The Edgar family's influence was vast, overseeing a territory of 300,000 square kilometers. Their domain boasted fertile fields, a grand castle, and a population of over 1 million. As a noble, Ren had everything he could ever want, from fine clothing to a personal maid. Yet every time he looked into the mirror, he saw Yan's face staring back at him, a haunting reminder of his past life. One day, Ren's introspection was interrupted by Leah, a beautiful and cheerful maid, who informed him that his father wanted to see him. She led him to the study, where his father, Aldine, was reviewing reports from across their lands. Ren greeted him with the practiced courtesy of a noble, awaiting his father's words. Aldine regarded his son with a serious expression, his tone carrying weight as he asked, "Do you know why I called for you?" The gravity of the moment made Ren uneasy, but he softly replied, "No, I don't, father." The Duke leaned back in his chair, his stern demeanor easing slightly. "Ren, you've reached the age to manage your own territory. Have you considered where you would like it to be?" The question left Ren stunned. His surprise turned into confusion as he hesitantly inquired about inheriting land. Aldine sighed at his son's naivety, explaining that it was customary for a noble of Ren's age to take charge of a territory. Rising from his chair, the Duke approached a large map mounted on the wall. "The land you'll oversee is in the northwest. It's relatively safe, but the lack of mages has made food supply a persistent issue." His tone grew more solemn as he continued. "While our territory is stable for now, The future of the Coriol Empire is uncertain. Ren silently agreed with his father's assessment. The royal family's decline and the decaying political system had led to a fractured empire. Lords constantly clashed, with hidden rivalries and schemes weaving a dangerous web of competition that only grew more tangled with time. Since his rebirth, Ren experienced care and affection he had never known before. This newfound love made him determined to protect those who genuinely cared for him. Observing his son deep in thought, Aldine grew concerned, questioning whether he was placing too much responsibility on Ren. In an attempt to ease the tension, he reassured his son that he wasn't alone. Aldine reminded Ren that he had his older brother, his sister, and his father to support him. Ren, however, appeared to have an idea. He looked at his father with a newfound determination. With a serious tone, he asked if solving the food supply issue would make their territory safer. Aldine smiled at Ren's enthusiasm, but viewed his son's approach as overly simplistic. He explained that resolving the food problem required more than passion. It demanded meticulous planning and gradual implementation. But Ren wasn't thinking simplistically. He was drawing from the accumulated knowledge of humanity, forged through countless industrial revolutions. With unwavering confidence, he boldly declared that he would take on the responsibility of addressing the food crisis. Ren's journey to his new domain began. Island City, the remote territory assigned to him, was a land rich in potential but fraught with challenges. To the north, it bordered the territory of Grand Duke Ryan, a sworn adversary. To the west lay the enigmatic lands of the elves, and to the south stretched the vast, uncharted ocean. The territory's strategic location had made it a frequent battleground, leaving its fertile lands barren, its population sparse, and its resources depleted. As the carriage carried him toward Island City, Ren immersed himself in the documents detailing his new domain. Leah, his loyal companion, watched him intently, concern etched on her face. Ren knew that revitalizing the territory required increasing its population, as a strong workforce was the backbone of any industrial revolution. He understood the enormity of the challenge but believed his efforts would succeed. Ren wasn't starting from scratch. Among his assets was a special skill granted to him by the system, Human Resource Scan. This ability allowed him to assess and identify talented individuals with ease. Having tested the skill on his family, Ren had established a clear understanding of the world's talent standards. His first priority upon arriving in Island City was clear: find extraordinary individuals who could aid in restoring the territory. Meanwhile, Leah recalled the Duke's instructions to her: support Ren and ensure he didn't create chaos in the region. Silently, she prayed that Ren wouldn't make a mess of things. In Island City, the city lord's residence was abuzz with tension. A man, visibly anxious, reported that the Duke's youngest son would arrive soon. He suggested taking preemptive action. However, the masked man seated across from him dismissed the concern with a cold, measured response. He instructed them to await further orders and not to touch Ren for now. His calm demeanor masked simmering anger as he spoke of making Aldine pay for past transgressions. The blonde-haired man nearby was less composed. Nervously, he fretted over his falsified financial records and embezzled taxes. However, the masked man laughed dismissively, deriding Ren as an ignorant playboy who would never notice such details. All they needed to do was hand him some irrelevant documents upon his arrival. The blonde-haired man reluctantly obeyed and left to prepare for Ren's reception. As Ren's carriage approached the outskirts of Island City, he peered out at the barren fields and abandoned farmlands. His expression turned serious as he surveyed the scene. He requested a map from Leah and examined the surrounding area meticulously. His gaze lingered on the river to the west and the harbor to the south. A sudden idea struck him. Dredging the river and building a canal to connect it to the sea could breathe new life into the land. Ren's thoughts were interrupted by a desperate cry. A young girl knelt in the dirt, clutching the leg of a man, likely her father, who seemed intent on heading to a gambling den. The girl pleaded tearfully, begging him not to gamble away their remaining money, which was meant for her mother's treatment. Her voice trembled as she explained that losing the money would doom her ailing mother. The man, consumed by his greed, roared at the girl to let go. His confidence in his luck blinded him to her desperation. When she refused to release him, he raised his hand in anger, intending to strike her. Before the blow could land, Ren intervened. With a swift punch, he sent the man sprawling to the ground. Fury burned in Ren's eyes, though he winced immediately. This was, after all, the first time he had ever thrown a punch. Leah rushed to Ren's side, her face filled with concern. She scolded him gently, remarking that next time he planned to hit someone, he should at least warn her so she could bring protective gear. Ren chuckled, brushing off her concern. He explained that the punch had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, leaving no time for preparation. As he spoke, he strode toward the man sprawled on the ground, instructing Leah to check on the girl while he dealt with the gambler. The man, still clutching his face, stared up at Ren in shock. Ren's gaze was sharp and filled with contempt. He berated the man for taking money meant for his family and gambling it away, even resorting to hitting his own daughter. The gambler scowled and tried to defend himself, asking who Ren was to meddle in his affairs. Ren stepped closer, his presence imposing. He warned the man that it didn't matter who he was. If he ever caught him near a gambling den again, the consequences would be severe. Ren's cold tone and threatening demeanor made the man pale with fear. Stammering, the gambler promised to stay away from gambling dens and quickly fled the scene. Feeling satisfied with his handling of the situation, Ren turned back to the girl, who stood there frozen in shock. Concerned, he asked if she was all right and activated his system to check her condition. The girl, named Lillian, bowed her head in gratitude, thanking Ren profusely. She explained how losing the money would have meant losing the chance to save her mother's life. As Ren studied the system screen, he was intrigued to see her stats. While most were ordinary, one unique attribute stood out: her potential in agriculture and harvesting. Recognizing this hidden talent, Ren decided on the spot to recruit her for his plans to restore the land. Ren smiled warmly at her, noting that she was likely heading into the city to find a doctor for her mother. He suggested she join his group, as they were also traveling there. Lillian hesitated, concerned about dirtying his carriage, but Ren reassured her with a calm smile. He explained that a carriage was just a vehicle, merely planks of wood pieced together. There was no such thing as clean or dirty when it came to transportation. Besides, he had a few questions for her. Suddenly, Ren's tone grew serious. He questioned why a gambling den existed in such a poverty-stricken area. He recalled the region's recent hardships. Last fall, soldiers sent by Grand Duke Ryan had attacked, leading to heavy casualties. Early in the spring, devastating floods had ravaged the land, leaving its people struggling to survive. The streets of Island City bore the scars of these events, with beggars lining the roads and despair visible everywhere. Walking through the ruined streets, Ren decided it was essential to conduct a full population census to assess the remaining productive workforce. First, however, he planned to visit the city lord's manor to review the reserve funds and determine what could be allocated for infrastructure improvements. Ren asked Lillian for the manor's location, but before she could answer, a shout interrupted their conversation. A blonde-haired man on horseback barreled down the street, shouting for people to move out of his way. The man seemed indifferent to the chaos he caused, his actions reckless and dangerous. Leah reacted swiftly, pulling Ren aside just in time to avoid the galloping horse. The rider disappeared into the distance, unconcerned about the commotion he had left behind. Leah, however, glared after him furiously. To her, anyone who dared harm Ren deserved the harshest punishment. As Leah's grip tightened protectively around Ren, he struggled to breathe and finally managed to get her attention. She quickly released him, apologizing and asking if he was hurt. Ren reassured her with a smile, expressing his gratitude for her quick actions. Turning serious again, Ren asked Lillian if she recognized the rider. Trembling, she explained that he was the young master of the Elwyn family, whose wealth stemmed from owning all the gambling dens in Island City. Ren's expression shifted to one of interest. If the Elwyn family was wealthy, it presented an opportunity to fund his plans. He asked Lillian to take him to one of the gambling dens, but she tried to dissuade him, worried that he would lose all his money. Ren, however, remained confident. He assured her that the gambling den wouldn't be taking anything from him. Watching his determined figure, Lillian couldn't help but wonder who this noble young man truly was. Soon, Ren arrived at the gambling den. The building stood out starkly from the surrounding structures, its grandeur flaunting the disparity between wealth and poverty. Guards were posted at the entrance, but Ren approached without hesitation. A sly smile crossed his face as he thought of his plans. He would take everything from this place to fund his industrial projects. Inside, the den was a chaotic mix of noise and desperation. Gamblers pleaded for loans, certain they could win back their losses in the next round. Others celebrated fleeting victories or lamented crushing defeats. Ren observed the scene with a critical eye. As long as this gambling den existed, he realized, the people of Island City would never have the motivation to work diligently. Leah leaned close to Ren, her voice low and cautious as she informed him that their soldiers had surrounded the gambling den. She asked if they should proceed. Ren, maintaining his calm demeanor, told her to wait. He wanted to capture an even bigger target. As he stood there, a staff member from the gambling den approached him with a polite smile and asked what game the young master would like to play. Ren smiled back, feigning inexperience, and admitted that he wasn't very familiar with gambling but wanted to try a few rounds. He asked the staff member to recommend a simple game. Sensing an easy mark, the attendant suggested a dice game and handed Ren 2 complimentary chips, claiming they were free for him to try his luck. Ren accepted them, seemingly pleased. The game began as Ren casually tossed the 2 chips onto the small betting slot. Watching this, the 2 casino staff members exchanged smug glances, confident in their scheme. The dice rolled quickly, landing on 6 and 6. Big. The attendant feigned sympathy, consoling Ren by saying he had been close to winning. Ren played his part perfectly, expressing surprise at how quickly the game ended. He remarked that it wasn't very entertaining and said he felt hungry, turning to leave. The attendant, however, stepped in front of him, blocking his way. His polite demeanor dropped, replaced with a mocking tone as he demanded payment for the chips Ren had used. Ren frowned, feigning confusion. He asked when he had agreed to owe anything. The attendant sneered and explained that the chips were not gifts, but loans. He added that each chip was worth 100 gold coins, and with processing fees and interest, Ren now owed 250 gold coins. Smirking, the attendant suggested that if Ren couldn't pay, he could leave his maid as collateral. Lillian, outraged by the scam, quickly spoke up. She accused the attendant of lying and explained to Ren that the chips were worth no more than a silver coin each. The attendant, furious at Lillian for exposing his trick, shouted for the guards to beat her. Before he could finish his command, Ren struck him with a powerful punch, sending the man flying backward and crashing into a nearby table. Adjusting his clothes calmly, Ren remarked that someone like the attendant had no authority to speak here. The casino erupted into chaos as gamblers scrambled to grab the chips that scattered across the floor. Ren sighed as he watched them, muttering that none of these people were of any use. Suddenly, a commanding voice echoed through the room, demanding to know who was causing trouble. The speaker was the same man Ren had encountered on horseback earlier. Ren's lips curled into a smile. He had finally caught the bigger fish. The man's arrival silenced the chaos instantly. He glared at the room with displeasure before ordering his guards to teach the troublemakers a lesson. Without hesitation, the guards began mercilessly beating those nearby, ignoring their cries for mercy. The remaining crowd watched in fear, too scared to intervene. The young master of the Elwyn family sneered at the onlookers, threatening them to behave or face the same fate. Lillian, clutching Leah's arm, whispered that it was all her fault. She blamed herself for leading them to the den and felt ashamed for putting Ren and Leah in such a position. She recalled how Ren had taken her mother to the hospital, personally ensuring she received treatment and promising to cover the costs. That memory filled her with determination. Summoning her courage, Lillian stepped forward and declared that she would not allow them to scam her brother. Her boldness caught everyone's attention, though most were too afraid to react. Murmurs spread through the crowd, questioning who she was and how she dared challenge someone like the young master of the Elwyn family. Weo, the young master, stared at her coldly, enraged by her defiance. Lillian stood her ground, accusing him of using the casino to exploit and destroy families. She refused to let him bully Ren and Leah, calling them good people who didn't deserve such treatment. Weo, seething with anger, lunged at her. Despite her fear, Lillian refused to move, shielding Ren with her small frame. Before Weo could harm her, Ren intercepted the attack, grabbing his arm. Ren then activated his system skill to assess Weo's stats. The results revealed low attributes, only 5 loyalty points, and a personality marked by cruelty and bloodlust. Ren recognized the Elwyn family as a potential threat, one capable of betrayal at any moment. Blocked, Weo glared at Ren and accused him of not respecting the rules of the casino. Ren calmly released his grip and responded that he understood the rules perfectly. In this world, power dictated everything, and the strong made the rules. Weo sneered arrogantly, fully convinced that he was the strongest in the city. He questioned why Ren still dared to oppose him, asking if Ren even knew who he was. Ren's expression remained steady as he responded confidently, asserting that he didn't need to know who Weo was. The only thing that mattered was his own strength, as his fist was bigger, and his word was the law. With that, he clapped his hands, signaling his soldiers to storm into the casino. The scene then shifted to a grand banquet held in Ren's honor, gathering the city's most prominent and influential figures, each with their own hidden agendas. Among the attendees was Lucas, the head of a prestigious family. Lucas planned to collaborate with the city lord during this banquet to teach Ren a lesson. He had intended to use Weo to establish a connection with Ren that he could later manipulate, but he was puzzled by Weo's absence. Frustrated, he realized he couldn't rely solely on the city lord's incompetence and would need to adapt his plans. As the banquet hall buzzed with murmurs, a loud voice suddenly announced Ren's arrival. The atmosphere shifted instantly, growing tense and silent as Ren entered. His presence commanded attention, and the guests quickly adjusted their demeanors. The head of the Raven family hurried forward, introducing himself and presenting a gift to Ren. Another guest, the head of the Jose family, eagerly introduced his daughter, hoping to curry favor. However, Ren's sharp expression silenced the room as he instructed everyone to quiet down. With everyone present, Ren declared that it was time to officially begin. He gestured for his attendants to bring in a large blueprint, a peculiar object that immediately caught everyone's attention. Pointing to the blueprint, Ren explained that it was a design for a dam that he had sketched earlier that afternoon. He mentioned that he would enlist skilled craftsmen during its construction to confirm the finer details. The room was filled with whispers as the attendees exchanged confused glances. Someone asked aloud what a dam was, speculating whether it was a tool for fishing. Ren quickly called for silence and instructed Leah to display a map of the region. With the room now quiet, he began his presentation. Ren explained that during his survey of Island City earlier that day, he had identified the root cause of the city's annual flooding, a poorly managed canal in the far north. By building a dam at this location, they could control water flow, using it to irrigate fields during the dry season and releasing excess water during the rainy season to prevent floods. Lucas, listening intently, couldn't help but be impressed by the ingenuity of the plan. He realized that if the dam was successfully built, it would significantly boost the city's food production. For the first time, he acknowledged that Ren possessed a sharp and innovative mind. An older man in the audience asked how the project concerned them, prompting Ren to explain calmly that he needed their investments to fund the dam's construction. This statement shocked the crowd, sparking a wave of grumbling. Many protested, claiming they were too poor to contribute. Lucas remained silent, privately thinking that while Ren was intelligent, he was also naive to expect these opportunists to willingly invest. Ren, however, wasn't as naive as they assumed. Smiling, he reminded them there was no need to feign poverty. He had a plan to make everyone a fortune. Ren revealed that earlier that afternoon, he had seized a casino and confiscated nearly 50,000 gold coins. He hinted that there were several more casinos in Island City ripe for similar action. The revelation left the attendees stunned. Their minds raced as they processed the implications. Some murmured anxiously, wondering if their shares in the casino profits were now lost. Others hoped the seized casino wasn't one of their investments. It became clear that the largest casino in Island City belonged to Lord Andrine, making it likely that Ren had provoked a powerful enemy. Lucas, his calm facade masking inner fury, stepped forward to confront Ren. He accused Ren of acting unlawfully by dismantling a legitimate business without authorization. Lucas emphasized that the laws of the Corial Empire could not be violated and warned Ren of the consequences. Others quickly chimed in, echoing Lucas's words. They accused Ren of overstepping his authority and pointed out that casinos were legitimate businesses. The crowd grew more emboldened, rallying behind Lucas's objections. Ren, unfazed by their protests, remained calm. He addressed the room, noting that when he asked for investments, they claimed to be poor, but now that he offered an opportunity for profit, they were suddenly concerned. He pointed out that most of them were complicit in the casino operations and warned them that this was their last chance to save their reputations, or he would intervene personally. At this, Ren's soldiers stepped forward, their presence a stark reminder of Ren's authority. Lucas, speaking for the group, insisted that the Grand Duke would never condone Ren's reckless actions. Others chimed in, pleading with Ren to reconsider his approach and urging him to act with restraint. Ren smiled, his plan unfolding perfectly. With an air of authority, he announced that he would gladly discuss the law with them. His voice was calm but commanding as he gave the order to bring in those who would help clarify the situation. The crowd fell silent, their unease palpable, as they awaited what Ren had planned next. At Ren's command, 2 men captured at the casino were brought into the room. Lucas, seated among the nobles, was immediately struck by their presence. These 2 were always by Weio's side, and their unexpected appearance left Lucas uneasy. He began to suspect that something must have happened to his son. The men were brought in, bound and gagged, unable to speak. Ren, maintaining his calm demeanor, turned to Lucas and asked if he recognized them. Lucas, keeping his expression neutral, denied any knowledge of the men and asked what Ren meant by the question. Ren smiled lightly, reassuring Lucas not to be so tense. He explained that it wasn't a big deal. These 2 men had simply tried to assassinate him the previous day. Glancing pointedly at Lucas, Ren added that the men had claimed to control the city of Islan, and even hinted at having a powerful backer. Lucas's expression darkened, though he worked to maintain his composure. Beads of sweat formed on his brow as he attempted to hide his unease. Ren ordered his soldiers to untie the 2 men, suggesting they let the party guests see if anyone recognized them. The nobles in the room exchanged uneasy glances. Many of them instantly identified the men as Weio's attendants. Fear gripped the room as the implications of Ren's words became clear. Lucas, realizing the gravity of the situation, acted without hesitation. He grabbed a dagger from the table and lunged at the 2 men with a fury that shocked the onlookers. He denounced them as wretched commoners who dared to attack the Duke's son and swiftly killed them both. Blood pooled on the floor, and the room fell silent as the other nobles watched in stunned horror, too afraid to intervene. Standing over the bodies, Lucas turned to Ren with a feigned look of shame. He apologized profusely, claiming that he had acted out of anger upon hearing about the assassination attempt. He begged for Ren's forgiveness. Ren, who had anticipated this move, smiled knowingly. He praised Lucas for his sense of justice, commending him as a noble who acted decisively. Lucas, masking his relief, thanked Ren for the compliment, stating that he had only done what was necessary. But Ren wasn't finished. Calmly, he ordered his soldiers to bring out the mastermind behind the events to see if there were any other nobles in the room as principled as Lucas. The command made Lucas tense. His son, Weo, was quickly dragged into the room. As soon as he entered, Weo, completely unaware of the situation, shouted angrily at the soldiers to untie him. He boasted about his father's influence, threatening that everyone present would pay once he was free. Lucas's expression crumbled at the sight of his son. Any arrogance in his demeanor vanished as he realized why Weo had been absent from the banquet. Weo, seeing his two attendants lying lifeless on the floor, erupted with rage. He insulted Ren, threatening him with torture once he was released. Ren, unfazed by the outburst, chuckled. He sarcastically noted that Weo not only wanted to kill him, but also seemed eager to inflict as much suffering as possible. Weo continued his tirade, boasting that no one in Islan dared to oppose him, and that Ren's death was inevitable. Ren turned to Lucas, asking if he agreed with his son's claims. Weo, still oblivious to Ren's identity, laughed and mocked him further. Just as Weo was about to reveal Lucas's identity, his father cut him off sharply. Lucas, now desperate, scolded Weo, calling him a disobedient son. He ordered Weo to kneel before Ren, but when his son hesitated, Lucas forced him down. Falling to his knees alongside his son, Lucas pleaded for Ren's mercy. He begged for forgiveness, offering all his possessions in exchange for sparing Weo's life. It was only then that Weo realized his mistake. He recalled his father's instructions to befriend the Duke's son, and fear crept into his eyes as he finally understood Ren's true identity. Stammering, Weo apologized and swore never to act so foolishly again. Ren's expression remained cold as he told Weo that his soldiers and authority were proof enough of his status. Lucas joined in, swearing that the Elwyn family would serve Ren loyally and even offering to surrender all their illegally gained assets. Ren, unmoved, informed Lucas that he would accept his offer to turn over the assets. He assured him that if he complied, his family would remain safe. Relieved, Lucas expressed his gratitude. However, as he glanced at the city lord, he realized his influence was now diminished. Knowing he had little choice, Lucas whispered to Ren about a plot against the Duke. He revealed that Lord Eldry had been colluding with outside enemies to betray the city. The revelation shocked the room, and all eyes turned to Eldry, who stood frozen with fear. Lucas was about to elaborate, but Ren interrupted him sharply. He accused Lucas of slandering Eldry and declared that he had been lenient enough. Ren ordered his guards to drag Lucas and Weo out of the room for execution. Lucas was stunned and terrified, unable to understand Ren's sudden shift in behavior. Meanwhile, Eldry, relieved by Ren's response, stepped forward to pledge his loyalty. He praised Ren for his wisdom and promised unwavering support. Ren, smiling, assured Eldry that he trusted him completely. However, Ren secretly used his system to analyze Eldry's attributes. Among ordinary stats, he found the trait greed and noted a loyalty level of only 15. Ren decided that Eldry, like Lucas, was destined to be eliminated. For now, however, he would use Eldry's resources to further his plans. After the banquet ended, Ren continued working late into the night. The nobles had contributed over 100,000 gold coins, an amount equivalent to 2 years of taxes collected from the city of Islan. Yet the sum didn't satisfy him. As Ren focused on his work, Leah entered the room carrying a cup of tea. She placed it on the desk and observed the displeasure in his expression. Ren took the tea and commented bitterly, questioning whether Leah realized just how wealthy the nobles truly were. Leah didn't respond to his question. Instead, she brought up a more pressing concern. She asked what Ren planned to do about Lucas's revelation at the party. If the city lord, Eldry, truly intended to betray them, it would put Ren in grave danger. Ren reassured her, asking her to stay calm. He admitted that he was certain of Eldry's betrayal, but explained that it wasn't the right time to confront him. When Leia asked why, Ren stretched and stood, answering that Eldry's full network of influence in Islan was still a mystery. Acting prematurely would only lead to unnecessary chaos. For now, it was best to let Eldry believe that Ren was an ignorant young lord, unaware of the threats surrounding him. The following morning, Eldry met with Guildmaster Malcolm at the Mages Guild. He handed Malcolm a piece of paper, and after reading it, the Guildmaster's face twisted with fury. Malcolm slammed the paper down, calling the situation absurd. Eldry, calm and calculating, asked him not to overreact. He dismissed Ren as a young and overeager noble desperate to prove himself to the Grand Duke. Malcolm, however, wasn't appeased. His irritation grew as he reminded Eldry that even the Grand Duke spoke respectfully to the Mages Guild. Eldry, satisfied with Malcolm's anger, inwardly celebrated. He believed Ren had handed him the perfect opportunity to win over the guild, something he previously lacked the means to accomplish. As Malcolm stormed off with the paper in hand, swearing to demand an explanation from Ren, Eldry silently rejoiced, confident that Ren would soon find himself isolated. Meanwhile, Ren was in his study, sketching plans for a hydraulic construction project. The work reminded him of the hardships he had endured in his previous life. Leah entered to inform him of an unexpected visitor. Guildmaster Malcolm had arrived and was demanding to see him. Surprised, Ren immediately made his way to the parlor to meet him. The moment Ren entered, Malcolm confronted him with anger. He slammed a recruitment notice onto the table, accusing Ren of insulting the Mages Guild. Ren, bewildered, asked for clarification. Malcolm pointed to the notice, which stated that no mages, the disabled, or the elderly would be hired for Ren's project. He demanded to know why Ren had issued such a notice. Ren examined the paper and calmly explained that it was related to the dam construction project. He saw no connection between the notice and any insult to the guild. Malcolm disagreed, accusing Ren of blatant provocation. He argued that by excluding mages, Ren was disrespecting the guild and its members. Ren was taken aback, surprised that mages were competing for manual labor jobs. Still fuming, Malcolm warned Ren that if no reasonable explanation was provided, all mages in the guild would refuse to serve him. Ren frowned and silently called out to his system to analyze Malcolm's stats. The system revealed Malcolm's loyalty level was 82, and his personality was described as inquisitive and straightforward. Ren concluded that Malcolm had been manipulated. Smiling, Ren patiently explained his reasoning. He outlined 3 key points. First, mages had limited mana and could only perform a small amount of work each day, making them unsuitable for large-scale construction. Second, their salaries were equivalent to those of 10 common laborers, making them cost-prohibitive. Third, as a noble, it was Ren's duty to prioritize the welfare of ordinary people who lacked the guild's support. Malcolm, however, remained unconvinced. He argued that magic was revered in their world, and those without magical talent deserved to be trampled beneath the feet of mages. Ren, irritated by this perspective, admitted that it might reflect reality, but firmly stated that he intended to change it. He declared that starting in Iceland, he would prove that mages were no different from ordinary humans. Malcolm, deeply insulted, issued an ultimatum. He demanded Ren retract his statement or face the consequences of angering the Mages Guild. Ren's expression turned cold as he reminded Malcolm to watch his tone. Leah, standing nearby, pressed a knife to Malcolm's throat, her eyes filled with menace. Malcolm froze in terror as Ren calmly pointed out that there was indeed a law allowing a noble's maid to execute someone for disrespect. Ren suggested testing the law with a small cut to see which side the court would favor. Trembling, Malcolm quickly apologized, admitting his mistake and begging for forgiveness. Ren, noting that Malcolm's loyalty hadn't decreased, realized the guildmaster had acted out of ignorance rather than malice. Deciding not to escalate the situation, Ren instructed Leah to escort Malcolm out. Malcolm thanked Ren and hurriedly left. As he departed, the system notified Ren that a beginner task had been completed. He had used the investigation function on 10 individuals. A reward was issued, and a new task appeared: train 5 characters with high stats. Pleased with his progress, Ren decided to review his rewards later. Outside the estate, Eldry waited for Malcolm. The moment he saw the guildmaster, he rushed over, feigning concern. He asked how the meeting had gone. Malcolm, still humiliated, sighed, and admitted that Ren had refused to listen and had even thrown him out. Eldry, frustrated but quick to recover, devised another plan. He assured Malcolm that he had a solution, one that would not only make Ren change his mind, but also force him to revere the Mages Guild. After his initial plan failed, Eldry quickly devised another approach. He encouraged Malcolm to manipulate the townsfolk into refusing to work for Ren, believing that such resistance would force Ren to seek Malcolm's assistance. However, Malcolm immediately rejected the idea, pointing out that Ren had offered excellent working conditions that the townsfolk were unlikely to refuse. Undeterred, Eldry suggested a different strategy. He proposed that if those who worked for Ren were shown to be lazy and idle, Ren would eventually grow disillusioned with the commoners. Malcolm dismissed the suggestion, explaining that his dissatisfaction stemmed solely from Ren's refusal to hire mages, not from any grievance with the commoners. He was reluctant to act against Ren over such a matter. Eldry persisted, urging Malcolm to reconsider. He argued that the commoners' inherent laziness was the reason they were starving and struggling to survive. If the land couldn't yield crops, Eldry reasoned, why didn't they take initiative and hunt for food? He claimed that people as idle as the commoners could never genuinely work hard for Ren. Reluctantly, Malcolm agreed to give the plan a try. Meanwhile, Ren's recruitment notice was posted in the town center, quickly attracting a crowd. The townsfolk gathered to read the announcement, intrigued by the new lord's plans to build something and his call for workers. As they scanned the notice, they were stunned. The job offered an 8-hour workday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 3 daily meals, and a wage of 10 coins per day. A young man in the crowd voiced his skepticism, questioning why the new lord was being so generous. Others shared his doubt, suspecting it might be a scam. Many recalled how nobles had deceived them in the past. Some argued that working under such terms could be dangerous, and might even cost them their lives. At that moment, Lillian stepped forward, her voice strong and determined. She defended Ren, stating that he had promised to improve everyone's lives. Her sincerity was met with laughter and ridicule. The crowd dismissed her words as naive, mocking her for trusting a noble. Even Lillian's father joined in, accusing her of being bewitched by Ren. Ignoring her father's remarks and the jeers of the townsfolk, Lillian announced her intention to register for the dam project. The recruiter, a young man overseeing the registration process, remained calm despite the crowd's skepticism. Turning to Lillian's father, he invited him to work on the dam, but stated that Lillian herself could not participate. Confused, Lillian demanded to know why she was being excluded, insisting she was healthy and capable. The recruiter explained that Ren had set strict rules prohibiting anyone under the age of 18 from working. He emphasized that hiring underage workers without Ren's approval would result in severe punishment. Handing Lillian's father a registration form, he reiterated the terms: 3 meals a day, an 8-hour workday, and a wage of 10 coins per day. If there were no further issues, he invited Lillian's father to sign the form and begin work the following day. Though slightly disappointed, Lillian encouraged her father to do his best and avoid any laziness. Her father, smiling warmly, patted her head and reassured her. He vowed not to gamble again and promised not to disappoint Ren. He also reminded Lillian to stay home the next day and take care of her mother, whose illness made it impossible for her to perform strenuous tasks. Before Lillian and her father could leave, the recruiter called out, asking them to return. Surprised, Lillian's father stopped and asked if there was a problem. The recruiter, looking concerned, mentioned that he had overheard the father say his wife was gravely ill. Lillian's father quickly clarified that his wife was indeed unable to work due to her condition. The recruiter smiled kindly and reassured him that he wasn't asking her to work. He explained that Ren had arranged for workers' families to stay in dormitories provided for the duration of the project. Seeing the father's confusion, the recruiter clarified that the dormitories were temporary housing units for families participating in the dam's construction. Once the project was completed, families could return to their original homes. Moved by such generosity, Lillian's father was overcome with emotion. Falling to his knees, he expressed his deep gratitude to the recruiter. The young man quickly stepped forward to help him up, insisting there was no need for such gestures. He then offered to show them a room where they could stay, allowing them to choose their accommodations. The surrounding townsfolk, who had watched the exchange, were astonished. Realizing that Ren's promises were genuine, they began clamoring to sign up for work. The square descended into chaos as people scrambled to register, eager to take advantage of the opportunity. Meanwhile, in his office, Ren was reviewing updates from the system. A notification suddenly popped up. Congratulations, you have received the lithium battery blueprint from the newbie gift pack. Instead of excitement, Ren felt a wave of irritation. He muttered to himself, questioning the system's logic. Without a generator, a battery was practically useless. Did the system expect him to summon a lightning strike? After venting his frustration, he calmed down and began to reflect. Ren's thoughts shifted to the task of training 5 individuals with high stats. He had no idea where to find such people. At first, he considered training Leah, but a review of her data through the system revealed that she had already reached her potential, leaving no room for further growth. After weighing his options, Ren concluded that his best course of action was to search for talented individuals within Island City. As Ren contemplated his next steps, a knock came at the door. Leah's voice called out from the other side, informing him that Lillian had come to see him. Ren granted her entry. Lillian stepped into the room, her face tense with worry. She quickly explained that something was wrong at the construction site. The workers were too lethargic to work. Ren was taken aback by the report and asked her to elaborate. Lillian recounted what she had observed during her visit to the site. She had gone to check on her father and noticed that none of the workers seemed to have the energy to complete their tasks. At first, she thought they were simply being lazy, but her father explained that everyone felt extraordinarily fatigued upon waking up. It wasn't just him. Every worker shared the same condition. Lillian had tried to encourage them, reminding them of the generous benefits Lord Ren had provided, but her words fell on deaf ears. The workers insisted that their fatigue wasn't deliberate. They genuinely lacked the strength to work. Some speculated that their bodies weren't used to the labor after such a long period of inactivity. Others suggested taking a day off to recover before resuming their duties. However, Lillian dismissed these excuses, declaring that there was no such illness. She firmly believed they were just being lazy. When she realized her efforts to motivate them were futile, she decided to bring the matter directly to Ren. After hearing her account, Ren wasted no time heading to the construction site. Upon arrival, he observed the workers firsthand. Their lethargy was undeniable. To understand the situation better, Ren used his system abilities to analyze their stats. On the surface, everything appeared normal, but he noticed one critical anomaly. All the workers were under a curse. Ren turned to Lillian and calmly explained the situation. They're not sick, they're cursed. After realizing the workers were cursed, Ren surveyed the construction site, contemplating his next move. He decided to test his newly acquired skill, geological survey. Initially, he had planned to use this skill during the dam's construction, but the current situation presented an immediate need. With this ability, Ren could analyze various geological features, including mineral compositions, hydrology, and topography within a defined range. Under Ren's command, the system activated, conducting a survey within a 10-kilometer radius. Moments later, the results materialized in his mind. While the survey confirmed the absence of valuable resources like oil or metals, something unusual caught Ren's attention. Acting on his instincts, he asked Lillian's father to assist him in digging at the marked spot. The man agreed without hesitation, expressing his readiness to work hard for Ren. After digging about a meter into the ground, the group unearthed a strange black stone. Ren crouched to examine it closely, questioning its nature. Leah, standing nearby, was astonished by Ren's ability to sense the faint magical energy emanating from the stone, something even she, with her expertise, had overlooked. Ren instructed the group to carefully remove the crystal and store it securely in a box. Turning to Leah, Ren asked what the usual procedure was for dealing with cursed individuals. Leah, caught off guard by the question, explained that curses were typically resolved by priests at a church or by high-ranking mages from the Mage Association. Hearing this, Ren frowned, suspecting a connection to the Mage Association. He then decided to take Lillian and her father to the local church for assistance. Lillian, worried, asked if her father was truly cursed. Ren reassured her, promising to make the culprit pay for their actions. The group quickly made their way to the church, where they were greeted by a stunning priestess. She welcomed Ren warmly, her demeanor calm and composed. Ren, ever cautious, used his system to assess her loyalty before entrusting her with the task. The system instantly revealed her stats: a loyalty level of 95%, race identified as elf, and an actual age of approximately 257 years, though she appeared no older than 24. Ren was surprised to learn she wasn't human, but felt reassured by her high loyalty. Introducing herself, the priestess said her name was Ari and referred to herself as the Holy Maiden of the Church. She politely inquired about the purpose of their visit. Pointing to Lillian's father, Ren explained that the man seemed to be cursed and asked if Ari could help. Ari nodded confidently and began examining the man. Closing her eyes briefly, she reopened them with a golden glow, scanning him intently. After a moment, she confirmed Ren's suspicion and began the treatment. Summoning a glowing sphere of light, she directed it into the man's body, expelling the dark energy. Instantly, the man felt revitalized, expressing his gratitude to Ren and vowing to return to work immediately. Ren, smiling, advised him to rest and ensure everything was fully resolved before resuming work. He then retrieved the box containing the black crystal and asked Ari for her opinion on it. Ari examined the crystal carefully, identifying it as a magic crystal infused with a significant amount of magical energy. She explained that such energy was often used for casting curses. However, she clarified that this particular curse was more of a prank, designed to cause fatigue rather than serious harm. The explanation made Ren uneasy. He asked whether such crystals were difficult to produce. Ari replied that for a high-level mage, creating one crystal a day was relatively simple. They could easily scatter them across the construction site. Ren's expression darkened as he realized the deliberate nature of the interference. Ari acknowledged Ren's project, praising its impact on reducing the number of people seeking aid from the church. Ren, now certain of the culprit's identity, resolved to take action. He asked Ari if it was possible to lift the curse over the entire construction site. Ari regretfully informed him that such a feat wasn't possible. Removing individual crystals daily would only slow the project's progress. Ren sighed, recognizing the need to address the root of the problem. Ari then mentioned someone who might be able to help, but warned that this individual was eccentric. She provided an address, and Ren decided to investigate. Ren and Leah arrived at a large mansion, which Ari had identified as the home of Selena, the former president of the Mage Association. Approaching the door, Ren knocked firmly, his determination unwavering. Suddenly, Leah sensed danger and swiftly pulled Ren aside. Moments later, an explosion erupted from the upper floor of the mansion, sending smoke and debris into the air. Ren, startled, demanded to know what was happening. From the smoke, a stunning woman emerged, her voice filled with frustration. She cursed her failed experiment, vowing to succeed even if it meant blowing up the entirety of Island City. After entering the house, Ren calmly presented his request to Selena, explaining the issue and seeking her assistance. However, she refused outright, dismissing him curtly. She informed Ren that she was preoccupied with researching a new magical device and had no time to deal with his problems. Intrigued, Ren asked her to elaborate, questioning if she meant something like a magic wand. Selena sneered at the suggestion, mocking his limited understanding. Leah, her demeanor icy, immediately intervened, warning Selena to watch her tone when addressing young Master Ren. Annoyed by Leah's reprimand, Selena turned her gaze toward her and commented on Leah's impressive magical power. With a sly smile, Selena suggested that Leah stay as her assistant. In return, Selena promised to assist Ren once her research succeeded. Sparks of lightning crackled around Selena as she displayed her power. Leah, unflinching, prepared to retaliate, her voice sharp as she offered to teach Selena some manners. Sensing the rising tension, Ren stepped between them, urging Leah to stand down. He reminded her that they were here for help, not to start a fight. Turning to Selena's cluttered workspace, Ren asked if she had created the items scattered across the table. He wanted to know if they were magical devices. Selena's eyes gleamed with pride as she confirmed his observation. She clarified, however, that everything on the table was a failed product. She explained that she was trying to create a magical device capable of sealing the lightning element magic within her body. Ren was astonished. He marveled at the concept, equating it to storing electrical energy. Selena confirmed his interpretation and mentioned that the earlier explosion was due to her devices failing to withstand her power. Dismissing him again, she said she needed to rest and continue her research. Ren paused, deep in thought, before making an offer. He told Selena that if he could help her create the device she needed, she would have to assist him with his issues regarding the Mages Guild. Selena, skeptical and irritated, brushed him off, claiming her research was far too complex for someone like him to solve. Remaining composed, Ren assured her he was serious. He promised to help her create the magical device, asking for her support in return. Intrigued but doubtful, Selena finally agreed, setting a condition. If Ren succeeded, she would not only deal with Malcolm, but also ensure the Mages Guild obeyed his every command. However, if he failed, she wouldn't hesitate to punish him. Without wasting time, Ren asked Selena to prepare the required materials. Using the blueprint provided by the system, he guided her in assembling a lithium battery pack consisting of 8 large batteries linked together. Despite their efforts, Ren felt nervous. They lacked a reliable power source to test the device, as a hydraulic generator wasn't available. They had no choice but to rely on Selena's magic as a substitute. Selena, following Ren's instructions, assembled the components but remained skeptical. She reminded him that most materials couldn't handle her magical power and warned that the device might explode. Ren, unfazed, handed her the wires and reassured her. He explained that the battery pack had a capacity of approximately 185 watt-hours and urged her to channel her energy into it. Reluctantly, Selena began discharging her magic. To her astonishment, the device absorbed her energy without any issues. Curious, she increased the output, yet the battery remained stable. Selena, shocked, demanded to know why the device hadn't exploded. Ren smirked and taunted her, suggesting that her magical power wasn't as impressive as she thought. Infuriated, Selena unleashed her full strength. Even at maximum output, the battery pack held steady, showing no signs of damage. Selena was left speechless at how much power the device could contain and how effortlessly Ren had built it. Ren, satisfied, stepped forward to check the charge level. The battery was at 87% capacity. Internally, he marveled at Selena's strength. She had charged nearly the entire pack, enough to power an electric car for over 3,000 kilometers. Ren's confidence grew as he turned to Selena and declared his plans to revolutionize the Mages Guild. He referred to them as potential power banks and explained his vision for their magical abilities. Selena, intrigued, asked if Ren himself could use lightning magic. Ren didn't deny it. Instead, he claimed he could make everyone in Island City capable of wielding magic. Selena was skeptical, pointing out that magic couldn't simply be learned by anyone. Ren, however, remained composed. He hinted at possessing a magical device even more powerful than the battery pack and promised to show her a world where magic was accessible to all if she agreed to help him. Selena, both baffled and curious, couldn't imagine such a possibility, but decided to continue working with him. The next day at the Mages Guild, Malcolm was leisurely reading a book, confident that Ren would soon come begging for his help. His calm was interrupted by Selena's sudden arrival. Seeing her enter, Malcolm froze in shock. The former president of the Mages Guild was the last person he expected to see. Stammering, he greeted her cautiously, wondering why she had come. Selena's voice rose in anger as she confronted Malcolm, accusing him of daring to challenge the authority of the Grand Duke's household. Her words carried a sharp edge as she questioned whether he was planning a rebellion. Malcolm, visibly shaken, stammered nervously, denying any such intentions. He assured Selena that he would never harbor such dangerous thoughts. Unconvinced, Selena grabbed Malcolm by the collar, her patience visibly wearing thin. She demanded the truth, insisting he confess what he had done at Ren's construction site. Malcolm, trembling, quickly relented. He admitted to summoning all the mages from the guild and inciting their anger by claiming that young Master Ren had disrespected them. He confessed to instructing the mages to craft curse-infused crystals and using teleportation magic to plant them underground at the construction site. This scheme was meant to cause the workers to feel fatigued, hoping Ren would blame them for laziness. Malcolm's goal was to force Ren to apologize and seek closer cooperation with the Mages Guild. Selena listened with a mix of disbelief and frustration. Shaking her head, she called Malcolm a fool and pointed out that he had been manipulated. When Malcolm, still confused, asked who had used him, Selena dismissed his question. Instead, she ordered him to recall every mage involved in the sabotage immediately. Malcolm nodded hastily and rushed off to follow her command. Once Malcolm was gone, Selena pulled out a talisman to contact Ren. She informed him that she had resolved the issue with the Mages Guild. Through the talisman, Ren expressed his gratitude, thanking her for her assistance. Selena, curious, asked if he needed her help dealing with Eldry, offering to make him disappear without a trace. Ren quickly declined, waving his hand reflexively, even though she couldn't see him. He explained that Eldry wasn't a significant concern and that he still needed him to lure out a bigger threat. Accepting Ren's decision, Selena agreed not to interfere. Her tone shifted to excitement as she brought up the new inventions Ren had mentioned earlier. She pressed him for details, asking when they would be ready and insisting he call her when he began working on them. Ren reassured her that he would keep her informed, but emphasized the importance of having the guild's mages finish charging the battery clusters first. The next day, at the City Lord's residence, Eldry met with a mysterious man cloaked in shadow. Eldry, visibly worried, reported that Ren had already taken control of the Mages Guild. He nervously asked for guidance. The mysterious man, however, remained calm and dismissive, stating that the Mages Guild posed no real threat, aside from Selena. He redirected Eldry's attention to Ren's dam project, warning that if the dam succeeded, it could revitalize the people of Islan, a scenario they couldn't allow. Eldry assured the man that he had already set traps for Ren and revealed an additional plan. He intended to pressure the nobles in charge of food supplies to raise prices, undermining Ren's efforts. When the mysterious man expressed doubt about the nobles' loyalty, Eldry confidently explained that while the nobles might betray him, they would never betray their own financial interests. Flicking a gold coin into the air with a smirk, Eldry declared that Ren's funds wouldn't last until the dam's completion. As the coin landed on the table, the mysterious man's figure dissolved into thin air. Meanwhile, in the bustling market, Lillian was buying supplies for the construction site when a shopkeeper rudely chased her away. His tone was condescending as he told her to leave if she couldn't afford the goods. Lillian, frustrated, pointed out the absurd price hike. Just the day before, 2 bags of grain had cost 1 gold coin, but now 1 bag alone was priced at 2 gold coins. The shopkeeper, unfazed, arrogantly stated that he could set whatever prices he wanted. He mocked her inability to pay and raised his hand as if to strike her. The commotion drew the attention of onlookers, many of whom were outraged by the shopkeeper's actions. Lillian, determined to fulfill her task for Ren, accused the merchants of profiteering and warned them of Ren's potential wrath. The shopkeeper sneered, dismissing her threat. He claimed his business was honest and that Ren had no grounds to interfere. His arrogance only deepened the frustration of those watching. At the church, Ari was equally infuriated by the rampant price gouging. She noted that food prices had tripled in just 3 days, leaving her with inadequate grain to sustain the people through the winter. Handing a pouch of coins to her assistant Era, she instructed her to buy whatever supplies she could, promising to figure out the rest later. Era hesitated, surprised by the unusually large sum of money, and pointed out that bribing guards typically required much less. Ari sighed, urging Era to follow her orders without question. Before Era could act, Leah appeared suddenly, snatching the pouch with lightning speed and handing it to Ren. With a calm but determined expression, Ren suggested a collaboration. He proposed working together on a larger plan, one that would address the root of the crisis and prevent further exploitation by the merchants. Ari looked at Ren with suspicion, questioning what kind of cooperation he had in mind. Ren smiled at her guarded demeanor, suggesting she relax and not be so tense about discussing cooperation. He then casually mentioned that he knew she was an elf. Ari, though deeply concerned that Ren had discovered her true identity, maintained her composure and denied it, insisting that an elf couldn't possibly be living in a human city. Ren, unfazed, tossed a pouch of coins back to Ari and reassured her that he held no malicious intentions toward her or her kind. Ari, avoiding the topic, redirected the conversation, again asking what kind of cooperation he was proposing. Ren gestured toward the sacks of food on a cart nearby and explained that he wanted to collaborate on resolving the issue of food supplies in the city. While Eri respected Ren's determination, she doubted his ability to tackle such a deeply entrenched problem. She openly voiced her skepticism, prompting Ren to ask why she felt that way. Eri elaborated, explaining that food supplies in Eastland were controlled by 4 major families who had held power in the city for over a century. These families tightly regulated prices, and their influence was unshakable. She reminded Ren that although he had used strong-arm tactics at the recent banquet to intimidate some of them, they were cunning individuals who would undoubtedly find a way to recover their losses. Ren interrupted her, curious about her in-depth knowledge of the city's inner workings. Ari admitted that she had lived in Islan for over 120 years and understood its complexities well. She further suggested that had Ren eliminated the Elwyn family at the banquet, there might have been a chance for reconciliation. But now, it was too late. Ari added that due to war and natural disasters, food was already scarce, and if prices remained high, her tribe would struggle to survive the winter. Ren cut her off again, his gaze resolute. He promised Ari that within 2 weeks, food prices in Island would plummet to levels even lower than before the recent price hikes. At the mansion of Augustus Ken, head of the Klein family, a celebratory gathering was underway. Augustus expressed his gratitude to Eldry for his support, acknowledging that their alliance had led to significant profits. Others in the room echoed their thanks, raising their glasses to toast Augustus and their shared success. The mood was jubilant as the group reveled in their recent gains, confident in their strategy. Their celebration was interrupted by a servant announcing that Ren had invited them to attend a banquet at his mansion. One of the men, startled by the news, speculated nervously whether Ren was planning to punish them. Turning to Augustus, he asked for guidance on how they should proceed. Augustus, calm and calculating, reassured them that they had nothing to fear. He explained that their trade in food supplies was entirely legal and protected by the system they had established. Augustus emphasized that as long as they didn't openly defy Ren, they wouldn't be in danger. He pointed out that the collective strength of their 4 families was formidable, and that even the king had no authority to interfere with food pricing. With this reasoning, the group relaxed, agreeing that their position was secure. Augustus suggested that if Ren attempted to pressure them, they could make a token gesture by slightly lowering prices, perhaps by 5 copper coins. However, he warned them sternly that any betrayal would result in severe consequences. With their confidence restored, Augustus encouraged the group to prepare for the banquet. Despite their initial surprise at his insistence on changing into old, tattered clothes, they followed his lead. At Ren's mansion, a servant informed him that Augustus and the invited guests had arrived. Ren instructed the servant to invite them in and ensure the kitchen prepared the food. When Augustus and the others entered, Ren immediately noticed their deliberate attempts to appear impoverished, their once lavish clothing replaced with ragged attire. Amused, he thought to himself how poorly they played their roles. Maintaining his composure, Ren greeted them with mock surprise. He commented on how unexpected it was to see the nobleman who controlled Eland's food supply looking so destitute. Augustus quickly responded, praising Ren's projects and claiming that they, too, wanted to contribute to the greater good. Another man chimed in, explaining that under Augustus's leadership, they had not only donated money to Ren's initiatives, but also sold food from their warehouses at the lowest possible prices, even taking a loss to help the citizens. Leah, observing their shameless behavior, felt nothing but disdain. Their blatant lies and attempts to deceive Ren did not surprise her. Ren, however, played along, thanking them for their understanding and claiming to be deeply moved by their support. He explained that he had invited them to discuss the grain trade plan. Before Ren could continue, Augustus interrupted, asserting that they understood Ren's financial difficulties. He reiterated that at the current price of 2 gold coins per sack of food, they were already selling at a loss. The others nodded in agreement, backing Augustus's claim. Ren smiled and clarified his intent. He proposed raising the price of food in Island to 4 gold coins per sack starting the next day. His statement left the nobles baffled. Augustus, confused, questioned whether Ren truly intended to increase prices. Ren confirmed with a calm yet commanding tone, explaining that not only would the price rise to 4 gold coins, but he would also take a 30% commission on all sales. When Ren announced that the price of grain would increase to 4 gold coins per sack, with a 30% commission going to him, Augustus was visibly confused. He questioned whether Ren had misspoken, unsure if he had heard correctly. Ren didn't repeat himself, instead calmly reminding Augustus about the 30% commission he would be taking. Hearing this, Augustus and the other nobles quickly exchanged delighted glances. Initially, they had underestimated Ren, thinking him to be just an inexperienced young lord. Now, they believed he was a cunning businessman like themselves. They viewed Ren as someone who understood their interests and figured that with his backing, their business ventures would thrive. Regret filled them for not realizing his shrewdness earlier. They could have aligned with him much sooner. Augustus, while excited by Ren's statement, knew they couldn't act rashly. Without official documentation, raising prices too high could cause chaos, potentially harming their interests. With this in mind, Augustus voiced his concerns, politely thanking Ren for his understanding and asking when an official announcement would be issued. Ren, prepared for this, instructed Leah to hand him a document. With a cheerful tone, he informed them that he had already written and stamped the official notice with his family seal, and it would be posted after their meal. As the conversation continued, Ren reminded the nobles that from now on, they would follow his instructions, urging them to learn from the consequences the Elwyn family had suffered. Augustus eagerly assured him that they wouldn't disappoint. After the banquet, the nobles gathered once again at Augustus's residence. Ren's unexpected approach had left them bewildered. They debated whether to report this new development to Eldry, noting how strange it was for Ren to increase prices rather than lower them. Some suspected he was motivated purely by greed. Augustus, however, dismissed their doubts, calling it a golden opportunity. He reminded them that if too many people learned of their scheme, their profits would shrink. He assured them that Ren was merely a child using benefits to draw them in and urged them to keep the price hike a secret. A vast fortune was within their grasp, and only a fool would let such an opportunity slip away. Despite Augustus's confidence, one cautious noble expressed unease. He admitted that in all his years, he had never encountered such a lucrative opportunity, which made him wary. Nonetheless, he pledged to follow Augustus's lead, bowing deeply as a show of loyalty. The others quickly followed suit, swearing their allegiance to Augustus. Satisfied, Augustus laughed heartily, declaring that from now on they would act as one. He proposed they immediately buy up all the grain from smaller merchants before the announcement was posted, ensuring they controlled the market and maximized their profits. Meanwhile, back at Ren's estate, unexpected guests arrived. Scientist Era stormed in, visibly furious. She accused Ren of siding with the corrupt merchants, demanding to know why he had promised to lower grain prices yet allowed them to skyrocket instead. Her anger flared as she declared that she wouldn't stand by while the elf race was being exploited. Lillian quickly stepped in, trying to calm her down. She assured Era that Ren intended to reduce food prices and urged her to trust him. Still agitated, Era snapped back, insisting that Ren had already become an accomplice to the greedy merchants. Despite this, Lillian maintained her faith in Ren's decisions, pleading with Era to believe in his plan. After a moment of tense silence, Era turned to Ren, her expression filled with concern. Hesitantly, she asked if he truly intended to raise food prices. Ren smiled but chose not to reveal his full strategy, simply reassuring her that food prices would drop soon. In the worst case, he promised, they would fall to their lowest point within 2 weeks. Era, unconvinced, felt Ren was being naive. She believed he didn't understand the harsh realities of the world. Having lived for over 200 years, she had never seen food prices decrease after a major spike. Ren, sensing her doubt, grew serious. He posed a rhetorical question. If he put a knife to the nobles' throats, how much did she think they would lower the price by? 1 coin? 10 coins? Era had no answer but remained skeptical. She argued that raising the price to 4 gold coins per sack was excessive, noting that at 2 gold coins, the common people had already struggled to afford food. With the price doubled, starvation seemed inevitable. Ren maintained his calm demeanor, explaining that whether the price was 2 or 4 gold coins, the people would starve either way. The only difference was the timing. He then declared that simply lowering the price by a few coins would be meaningless. His goal wasn't charity, it was to completely ruin the merchants and strip them of their fortunes. 7 days passed, during which Ren focused on teaching Selena about the creation and functionality of lithium batteries. Selena, fascinated by the device's complexity, was thoroughly engrossed in the lessons. Their session was interrupted by Leah's sudden appearance, announcing that Saintess Ira had come to visit once again. Over the past few days, Ira had visited frequently, prompting Ren to wonder if she had too much free time on her hands. Selena, equally curious, asked Ren why he had deliberately raised food prices. By now, grain prices in the city had soared to nearly 7 gold coins per sack. Ren, surprised by how quickly prices had risen, didn't have time to answer as Era burst into the room. She immediately scolded him, exclaiming that not only the common people but even some nobles could no longer afford food. She demanded to know if he realized how bad the situation had become. Remaining calm, Ren asked Leah how many days had passed since the price increase. Leah quickly responded, confirming that it had been 7 days. Hearing this, Ren smiled, declaring that it was time to deal with the merchants. Era, still frustrated, demanded that Ren stop speaking in vague terms and explain himself. She warned him that if he didn't, the elf tribe would soon cut ties with him. Ren finally responded, explaining that he hadn't shared the full details of his plan earlier because he feared it might disrupt things and raise suspicions among the nobles. Now, With everything in place, he was ready to explain. Ren revealed that the announcement setting a minimum food price of 4 gold coins per sack had been in effect for 7 days. He then posed a question to Era, asking what she thought Ailing City lacked the most right now. After a moment of thought, she replied that there didn't seem to be a shortage of anything. Ren smiled knowingly at her answer and calmly responded, "What the city lacks are merchants who sell grain." The Saintess paused, realization dawning on her face. Ren continued, explaining how greed was the easiest flaw to exploit. The absurdly high grain prices had drawn merchants from neighboring towns like moths to a flame, all eager to cash in on the inflated market. Unbeknownst to them, they had unknowingly turned Aislinn into the most food-rich city in the empire. The rush to sell at sky-high prices had spiraled into an uncontrollable cycle. By the end of the day, Ren predicted, the 4 noble houses controlling the grain trade would cease to exist. He reached into his bag and handed the Saintess a piece of paper, instructing her to post the notice across every major street and alley. The announcement stated that Lady Saintess, the holy maiden of the church, disapproved of Ren's methods and would instead sell the church's food reserves at only 1 gold coin per sack. The Saintess was instantly skeptical, questioning why Ren was willing to give her such good publicity. Ren smirked. Because, he said, he didn't have any food to sell. The Saintess frowned, confused. She argued that she barely had enough grain to sustain her people through winter. Ren confirmed that was exactly why she needed to sell. The panic on her face was almost amusing as she refused outright. There was no way she would put her people at risk. Selena chuckled at her reaction, shaking her head. She told the Saintess she was being naive. If she truly wanted to protect her people, she should trust Ren. Otherwise, she'd suffer heavy losses. The Saintess still hesitated. The elves didn't care about money, only food. Ren's voice took on a calm, almost reassuring tone. He told her to trust him, follow his lead, and she wouldn't lose anything. In fact, her food supplies would only increase. He then turned to Selena, instructing her and the Mage Guild to seal off the city. No one was to leave. Selena nodded. She'd make sure not a single rat escaped. As the Saintess and Selena left, Leah stood silently, concern etched across her face. Ren caught on immediately, asking what was bothering her. She admitted she was worried things wouldn't go as smoothly as he expected. What if the merchants held out for a few days and the church's food ran out? Ren chuckled, reassuring her. There were 2 kinds of strategies: covert schemes and overt plans. Covert schemes could be exposed, but overt plans were unavoidable. The merchants had already put everything they had into this gamble, blinded by their own greed. If they caught wind of food prices dropping, they would scramble to sell their stock before suffering devastating losses. Delaying would mean financial ruin. Meanwhile, at the Augustus estate, the nobles were in a state of panic. One of them voiced his concern, informing Augustus that the church had announced it would sell food at only 1 gold coin per sack to aid the people. Another noble echoed the alarm, pointing out that they had underestimated the church's resources. They had purchased all their grain at 2 gold coins per sack. If the church's grain flooded the market, they would take massive losses. Augustus, however, remained calm. He dismissed their concerns, questioning how much food a single church could possibly have. At best, it could sustain the city for a few days. His plan was simple: send men to infiltrate the church and buy up as much of the discounted grain as possible. The next day, a large crowd gathered outside the church, eager to buy food. Standing at the entrance, the Saintess tried to maintain order, raising her hand to calm the mob. She assured them there was no need to panic. There was more than enough grain to go around. She even claimed the Holy Pope himself had sent 100,000 sacks of grain, and more shipments would arrive in the coming days. Some in the crowd remained skeptical, assuming it was a lie. Tension grew as they began pushing forward. But just then, a group of soldiers arrived, instantly silencing the restless masses. One soldier stepped forward, addressing the Saintess with a formal tone. He confirmed that the grain had indeed been sent by the Holy Pope, and that more would arrive in a steady stream. The Saintess barely managed to hold back her growing anxiety. Nodding awkwardly, internally, she was in turmoil. What in the world was Ren up to? If the Holy Pope ever found out about this, she'd be in deep trouble. The citizens, however, had no such concerns. Cheers erupted through the crowd, their worries fading as relief washed over them. They had food. They were saved. The sight made the merchants break into a cold sweat. One of them muttered that it was over. This entire venture had been sabotaged by the church. Another quickly did the math. He had spent 60 silver coins per sack, and after factoring in transport and other expenses, his total cost per sack was 95 silver coins. If he wanted to avoid a complete loss, he had no choice but to start selling. Without hesitation, he shouted to the crowd that he was selling grain. 95 silver coins per sack. Instantly, people rushed forward. Others in the market saw what was happening and jumped into the price war, slashing their prices lower and lower. In that moment, the price of grain in Aislinn City collapsed. Watching the chaos unfold, Leah was in awe. Everything was happening exactly as Ren had predicted. She turned to him, excitement shining in her eyes. If the price of grain kept dropping, The construction project would remain right on schedule. Ren smirked, but his expression carried something deeper. Something almost predatory. Leah's estimation was far too conservative. 50 silver coins per sack? She was underestimating just how desperate those merchants would become. He leaned back, completely at ease. By the time Augustus and his allies started dumping their stock, grain wouldn't just be cheap. It would be worthless. Leah was taken aback. Was Ren really saying Augustus and his allies would start dumping their supplies just like the other merchants? They had bought grain at 2 gold coins per sack, maybe even more. And at the banquet, they had seemed so united. Surely they wouldn't betray each other that easily. Ren chuckled, amused by the naivete. United? That was giving them way too much credit. When faced with personal losses, greed always won out. At this point, the price of grain wasn't even his concern anymore. It was time to handle the final phase of his plan, with the Saintess. Without hesitation, he turned to Leah and told her it was time to go. Meanwhile, chaos was erupting in Augustus's mansion. A butler burst into the room, panic in his voice as he reported that the merchants from outside the city had gone mad. They were slashing prices repeatedly, and right now grain was selling for just 75 silver coins per sack. One of the nobles, Lord Roland, jumped to his feet in outrage. That had to be impossible. They controlled all the grain in the city. How could outside merchants be selling grain at all? The butler, clearly terrified, insisted it was true. Augustus, deep in thought, furrowed his brows before his eyes widened with sudden realization. It all made sense now. His voice carried a bitter mix of frustration and admiration as he muttered to himself. Ren had played them all like a fiddle. The other nobles stared at him, confused. What did he mean? Augustus laid it out for them. First, Ren had spread rumors about skyrocketing grain prices in Iceland, triggering a gold rush among merchants in neighboring cities. Blinded by greed, they had swarmed the city, bringing in more food than Augustus and his allies could have ever anticipated. Then, Ren had used the church's name to crash the market, forcing those merchants to panic sell their stock to avoid devastating losses. The result? A market-wide price collapse, with grain practically flooding into the city. Roland's face went pale. His back was slick with cold sweat. To think Ren would use such ruthless, underhanded tactics. Augustus wasn't done yet. He had one last plan, a desperate gamble that could still turn the tide. He explained that this grain would only sustain Iceland's people for a few months. If they could hold onto their own stockpile and wait for the inevitable shortage, they could still resell at high prices. The only way to survive this crisis was to stand together. If even one of them broke rank and started selling, they'd all be ruined. Roland nodded seriously, agreeing that they had no choice but to hold out. He made a show of declaring that he would rush home to lock down his stores and ensure nothing was sold. Then, without wasting another second, he bolted for the door. As soon as he left, the remaining nobles exchanged knowing glances. Roland was clearly planning to sell everything first, and if he was going to betray them, well, why should they wait? 2 more nobles immediately excused themselves, feigning loyalty, but secretly planning to do the exact same thing. Augustus, watching them go, clenched his fists. He turned to his butler, who nervously asked if they should also secure their grain. Augustus snapped, kicking the man aside. Fool! If they didn't sell now, those other traders would undercut them and leave them with worthless stock. In an instant, he gave the order. Sell everything, every last sack. Back at the church, Ren arrived to meet with the Saintess, casually asking if the elves now had enough grain to last the winter. The Saintess was still trying to wrap her head around the absurdity of it all. The more they sold, the more grain they seemed to have. It made no sense. Ren smirked. It was all about buying low and selling high. Every transaction was turning a profit. Tens of thousands of gold coins at a time. Just then, Lillian came rushing in with fresh news. The price had dropped again. 1 gold coin could now buy 3 whole sacks of grain. Ren turned to the Saintess with a smug grin. He had told her to wait, but she hadn't believed him. If she bought now, she'd have 10 times more food than before. Now, he said, it was time to discuss their real business. The Saintess hesitated. What exactly did he want to trade with the elven tribe? Ren extended a hand, his expression unreadable. Everything. The Saintess blinked in confusion. He elaborated. He wanted to collaborate on every aspect of trade. Food, clothing, housing, transportation. From grain to land, everything was on the table. The Saintess flustered. Something this big wasn't for her to decide. He'd have to negotiate with the Elven Queen directly. Ren had no objections. He handed her a letter, telling her to arrange the meeting. As he watched her leave, he reflected on his next moves. The grain crisis had served as a lesson for the nobles of Iceland. They wouldn't dare oppose him for a while. The Mage Guild was already under his control. The church? Just a matter of time. That left Eldrick, the city lord. He still had 2 crucial weapons, military power and tax control. If Ren could seize the military, Eldrick would be completely defenseless. Now he just needed a way in. Before he could get lost in thought, Leah appeared, interrupting him. She gently suggested that he rest. He had been working non-stop. Ren shrugged it off. He wasn't that tired. Before they could continue, a commotion erupted. A furious man stormed into the church, ranting about corrupt soldiers abusing the Grand Duke's authority. He cursed the heavens, demanding to know why the divine hadn't struck them down. The saintess stepped forward, calmly asking what had happened. The man, barely containing his rage, explained that he had come to Iceland to do business. Profit and loss were expected, but on his way back, the city's soldiers had robbed him blind, seizing all his money. Ren, intrigued, stepped in. He asked for details. The merchant, still seething, turned on him. Who was he? Ren simply smiled. Someone very interested in doing business. Ren, Leah, and Lillian disguised themselves as merchants and joined a caravan heading out of the city. When they arrived at the city gate, a guard immediately stopped them, demanding to know where they were coming from and what was in their cart. Lillian stepped forward, keeping her voice steady as she explained that she was a resident of Iceland, transporting goods purchased in the city for trade with the elven tribe. The guard sneered, clearly unimpressed. Without hesitation, he ordered his men to search the carts. The soldiers yanked off the covers and started smashing open barrels with their spears. Lillian's protest came fast, her voice sharp with frustration. If they kept wrecking her cargo, how was she supposed to transport it? One of the soldiers quickly reported that the carts were empty. The officer in charge, unfazed, announced that they still needed to pay a toll. Lillian's temper flared. They had already destroyed her goods, and now they wanted to charge a fee? The guard smirked, stating it was either pay up or turn back. Before Lillian could argue further, Ren, still concealed inside the cart, instructed her to just pay. With a deep breath, she forced herself to comply, handing over a silver coin. But the guard wasn't done. With a smug grin, he claimed that under Lord Ren's orders, the toll had increased. The new fee? 5 silver coins. Leah snapped, unable to contain her outrage. That was more than the total value of the goods they were transporting. The guard didn't care. Either they paid or they could stop blocking the road. Gritting her teeth, Lillian handed over the coins. Internally, she seethed. Someone was using Ren's name to extort people. Just wait. Once his plans were complete, she would love to see how he dealt with these crooks. The soldiers pocketed the money and waved them through. As soon as they left the city, a nearby merchant huffed in frustration, cursing the despicable young Lord Ren for his outrageous toll increases. Ren, still in disguise, raised an eyebrow and turned to him. The merchant traveling alongside them immediately protested, warning him to show some respect. Lord Ren was a benefactor of Iceland, and he wouldn't tolerate slander against him. Ren chuckled at the man's blind loyalty. The guard had outright stated that Ren had ordered the toll increase, yet the merchant still defended him. The man nodded firmly. Ren had lowered grain prices and helped the people, even though it had cost him a fortune. That was the first time he had seen a noble genuinely care for his people. If he ever met Ren in person, he'd gladly risk his life for him. Ren remained calm and pressed further, casually bringing up rumors about the youngest son of the Grand Lord killing someone at a banquet and forcing the townspeople to dig for something. The merchant snorted, dismissing the story. That was about the Eldwin family. They had gotten exactly what they deserved. Ren feigned curiosity, asking what else people knew about them. Lowering his voice, the merchant leaned in and whispered that everyone who did business in Iceland knew the truth. The Eldwin family's wealth didn't just come from gambling houses. Their real business was human trafficking. Ren's fingers clenched into fists, fury bubbling beneath his calm exterior. Human trafficking? Silently, he cursed. He was already struggling with a manpower shortage, and these bastards were out there running an underground slave trade. If he wanted to secure his territory, he needed control over the border troops. If internal chaos broke out, it would be too easy for outside forces to exploit the situation. Before he could think further, Lillian's outraged voice rang out from outside the cart. Another toll? The border guards had stopped them again, demanding additional payment. Lillian protested. They had already paid when leaving Iceland. Why were they being charged again? The guards scoffed, claiming that the toll for Iceland was separate from the one for the border post. Lillian wasn't buying it. This was blatant robbery. Smirking, the guard stated the new fee, 1 gold coin. Lillian's anger flared, but Ren cut in before she could argue. His voice was eerily calm as he told her to pay. She reluctantly handed over the gold, but the guards still weren't done. They demanded that everyone step out of the cart. This was a border post after all, and everyone entering or leaving needed to be inspected. Ren stepped down from the cart, his gaze locking onto the guard with a sharp intensity. If they wanted to inspect, then they should go ahead and do it. Ren watched as the guard stiffened, beads of sweat forming on his brow. The man's glare shifted toward the merchant behind Ren, his expression twisting with resentment. He recognized the merchant immediately and sneered, calling him an old fool for daring to return. Ren, catching the exchange, turned his attention to the merchant, sensing a deeper history between them. Trist, looking uncomfortable, reluctantly explained. The soldiers at the border were former bandits who had worked under the Eldwin family, primarily involved in kidnapping and human trafficking. They had been granted positions here as enforcers, overseeing illegal toll collections under the guise of regulation. The soldier scoffed and reminded Trist of a supposed past debt, claiming he hadn't paid enough last time, and that now he owed extra. Without waiting for a response, he struck Trist hard across the face. Trist staggered back, protesting that he had paid the full amount before, but the soldier, unmoved, simply pointed his weapon at him, demanding even more money. It wasn't just about the tolls anymore. Now that they had recognized him, they saw an opportunity to extort him for even more gold. If it had been someone else, they might have let it slide with just a few coins. But since it was him, the price had now risen to 5 gold coins. Ren observed the situation quietly before making a simple observation. If the tolls were this outrageously high, why was Aislin's financial income still so low? The soldier, uninterested in answering, dismissed Ren outright. But then his gaze landed on Leah, and his demeanor shifted. Amusement flickered across his face as he took a step toward her. Trist, trying to de-escalate, hurriedly produced a money pouch, hoping that 5 gold coins would be enough to settle things. The soldier, smug, accepted the pouch and casually tossed it to one of his men. But instead of stopping there, he reached out toward Leah, clearly looking for more than just money. Before he could touch her, Ren stepped in, blocking his path. Cold and calculating, he regarded the soldier and made his decision. Someone like this was beyond redemption. He had considered using them for labor, but they were a lost cause. The soldier, enraged, lunged forward, thrusting his spear at Ren. Leah moved before the attack could land. In a flash, the soldier was dead, his body collapsing lifelessly to the ground. The others immediately recoiled in terror. Panic spread through the ranks, and within moments, some of them abandoned their weapons, turning to flee. Their cries for help echoed as they scrambled away, desperate to escape what had just unfolded. Leah was already moving, cutting them down before they could escape. It wasn't even a fight, it was a massacre. Ren barely paid attention to the slaughter, instead pulling up the system's information on these so-called soldiers. Their stats were abysmal, hardly befitting military men. This wasn't a proper army, it was just a gang of thugs in uniform. Then, a memory surfaced. His father's warning before he left for Aislinn rang in his mind. Beyond Aislinn lay the territory of the enemy country, and any conflict could lead to disastrous consequences. If a war erupted with the Empire, Ren would be the one paying the price. Just as Leah finished dealing with the remaining soldiers, a commanding voice rang out across the border post. A man demanded to know who dared to cause trouble at Aislinn's gates. The soldiers, who had moments ago been fleeing for their lives, suddenly found hope. General Caesar had arrived. Seeing the man, the remaining soldiers scrambled toward him, pleading for his help. They painted themselves as victims, desperate for protection from the murderous attackers before them. Caesar, frowning, took in the scene, then set his gaze on Ren, demanding an explanation. Ren wasted no time using his skill to assess the general. The man's stats were impressive, most attributes above 70, making him a formidable fighter, but there was one problem. His loyalty was dangerously low, sitting at a mere 12. If not for that, he would have been an invaluable asset. Ren, unshaken, greeted him directly. He recognized him as Caesar of the Holker family, the man whose brother served under his sister, Prisia Edgar. Caesar hesitated at the mention of his brother, momentarily caught off guard. He had received a letter about Ren's arrival in Aislinn, along with orders to ensure his safety. But conflicting interests clouded his mind. A month ago, Eldrick had personally approached him with a chest full of gold. Along with the bribe came whispers of dissatisfaction, insinuations that the Duke had stationed him in this remote outpost because he didn't value him. Others encouraged his resentment, telling him that his talents were wasted here, that he was entitled to more. Even now, staring at the young noble before him, Caesar felt no guilt over his past decisions. He had made his choice. Gripping his sword, he issued a direct command, calling Ren an imposter and ordering his men to cut him down. In return, he promised them great rewards. The soldiers hesitated for only a second. Then, emboldened by their general's presence, they drew their weapons, preparing to attack. Caesar, fully aware of his crimes and the bribes he had taken from Eldrick, chose to deny any recognition of Ren. Without hesitation, he commanded his men to capture and execute him. Leah's fury was immediate. The audacity of Caesar's actions meant outright rebellion against the Empire. The soldiers hesitated, visibly uneasy, realizing the weight of the crime they were about to commit. If they followed through, their entire families could face execution. But Caesar remained steadfast. He reminded them of their own involvement, extortion, illegal tolls, and aligning with Eldrick. Their hands were already dirty. He pushed further, recounting Ren's actions in Aislinn City, how he had dismantled the Eldwin family and bankrupted 4 noble houses. With nowhere else to go, Caesar proposed a final gamble. If they took all the wealth they had stolen over the years and presented Ren's head to the Orvis Empire, they could secure new lives as minor nobles. He left them with a choice: live in fear, or take a chance at something greater. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances, torn between fear and greed. Slowly, they turned their weapons toward Ren. Seeing their shift in loyalty, Caesar's confidence soared. The fight was decided before it had even begun. He smugly offered Ren a final chance to say his last words. Yet Ren remained unfazed. He extended one last offer. If Caesar repented, he would be spared. But seeing the unwavering greed in his eyes, Ren was disappointed. Before he could say anything further, Caesar commanded his men to attack. The soldiers surged forward, Leah, enraged, tore part of her dress for better mobility and launched herself at them. In one swift motion, she felled an enemy with a precise strike. Another lunged at her with a spear, but she dodged, spinning gracefully before countering with a dagger to the throat. Amidst the chaos, she spotted a soldier closing in on Ren. Trusting him to hold his ground, she instead hurled her knife, taking down the attacker before he could get close. Ren, his patience now exhausted, turned to Caesar, offering one last chance to back down. Caesar ignored him and instead raised the stakes. He promised a massive reward, gold for whoever landed the killing blow on Ren. The soldiers, driven by greed, charged recklessly. Set his sights on Leah, knowing that taking her down would make the fight easier, but she anticipated the move, countering with a devastating kick that sent him crashing into the dirt. Others swarmed her, attempting to overwhelm her with sheer numbers. She dispatched them with a series of fluid strikes, a spinning kick sending several flying before they could even react. Recognizing Leah's strength, Caesar turned to his trump card, the Mage. With a flick of his wrist, the spellcaster conjured a burst of energy, unleashing 3 ice arrows at her. Leah shattered them mid-air with a rapid series of kicks, but the fragments froze the ground beneath her, trapping her feet in ice. Seizing the opening, Caesar roared for his men to attack. The soldiers split into 2 groups, one rushing Leah, the other targeting Ren. The battle was quickly shifting against them. Ren, unfazed, tossed a hammer to Leah and instructed her to leap. In his other hand, he readied a wire connected to an electrical device. Leah, trusting his judgment, slammed the hammer onto the ice, encasing her feet, breaking free before jumping into the air. The frozen ground provided the perfect conductor for Ren's experiment. As the wire touched the surface, a surge of electricity pulsed outward, striking the advancing soldiers. Screams filled the battlefield as they convulsed before collapsing unconscious. Standing atop insulated ceramic shards, Ren grinned, pleased with the results. The remaining soldiers, still standing, froze in terror. They had never seen anything like it. To them, this was some kind of forbidden magic. Caesar's fear quickly turned to rage. He barked at his men to continue attacking, but one soldier, horrified, hesitated and tried to warn the others. Anyone who got too close would die. Before he could finish, Caesar struck him down, killing him on the spot for disrupting morale. Glaring at the rest of his men, he issued an ultimatum: charge or face the same fate. Despite their fear, they had little choice. But even Leah was growing worried. If Ren's magic was so powerful, why hadn't it affected all of the soldiers? Ren realized the issue immediately. The battery had been drained. He had only brought one, and it had already been exhausted. Leah, sensing danger, urged him to escape, but Ren remained calm, smiling slightly. The battle was far from over. Caesar, seeing what he thought was an opportunity, commanded his men to give chase, believing that Ren had run out of tricks. The soldiers, emboldened, took a step forward, only to stop dead in their tracks as a massive pillar of light descended from the sky. The battlefield fell silent. Fear paralyzed everyone. Caesar looked up, his face paling as realization dawned on him. From above, a figure emerged. Selena, a member of the Mage Association, had arrived, and with her presence, everything had just taken a turn for the worse. As Ren faced a perilous moment on the battlefield, Selena and the mages from the Mage Association arrived just in time. With a confident smirk, she acknowledged the perfect timing, while Ren, maintaining his composure, admitted that his battery had just run out. Her curiosity piqued at the mention of his unusual energy source. But there was no time for explanations now. Caesar and his men had to be dealt with first. Selena wasted no time. She ordered the mages to assist in eliminating the rebels, and within moments, a barrage of lightning magic rained down from the sky. Thunderbolts struck the ground with deafening force, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The rebels, overwhelmed by fear and agony, begged for mercy, but the onslaught continued. Those who survived the initial attack panicked, throwing down their weapons and fleeing in all directions, their desperate pleas for forgiveness drowned out by the chaos. But Caesar refused to go down without a fight. Bloodshot eyes filled with hatred, he roared with fury and charged straight at Ren, evading the mage's attacks with surprising agility. Leaping high into the air, he unleashed a devastating ice mountain slash, aiming to take Ren down in a single, decisive strike. Yet Ren didn't move. He remained completely still, exuding an aura of unshakable confidence. Before the blade could land, Leah intercepted the attack. Armed with only a small dagger, she effortlessly blocked Caesar's powerful strike. The sheer force of the clash shattered the ground beneath her feet, but she remained unshaken. Caesar, realizing the gap in their strength, felt a wave of dread wash over him. Before he could react, Leah closed the distance and delivered a brutal kick, sending him flying into a wooden fence. His body crashed against it, and he collapsed, unconscious. An hour later, Caesar awoke to find himself bound, sitting in front of Ren, who was calmly flipping through confiscated documents. The dim light of an oil lamp cast sharp shadows on Ren's face, giving him a chilling presence. Without looking up, Ren noted that Caesar had embezzled a significant amount as a border official, and asked when his collaboration with Eldrick had begun. The question sent a shock through Caesar's mind. Ren knew everything. Ren didn't wait for an answer. He had suspected Eldric's betrayal long ago and had simply been waiting for the right moment to act. Thanks to Caesar, the opportunity had finally arrived. But Caesar scoffed at the idea that simple evidence of corruption would be enough to take down Eldric. Ren shook his head, amused by the misunderstanding. The records weren't meant to be used as blackmail. They were tools to calculate the city's tax revenue. His goal wasn't just exposing corruption. It was rebuilding Iceland. Caesar found the idea laughable. Eldric controlled the nobility, and none of them would ever follow Ren's lead. But Ren remained unfazed. He made it clear that the nobles only had two choices: follow Caesar into ruin or submit, and work for him. There was no third option. Chill ran down Caesar's spine as the realization sank in. Ren wasn't playing politics. He was purging obstacles. Later, as Ren observed the crumbling city walls, he assessed the impending threats. With autumn approaching, Grand Duke Soren would soon mobilize his forces. If war broke out, these fragile defenses wouldn't hold for long. The western border, controlled by the elves, was stable for now, provided negotiations succeeded. The east was under his sister's control, posing no immediate concern. But the north, Soren's territory, remained the biggest threat. Leah approached, presenting a report on the confiscated funds. The total embezzled amount had reached 350,000 gold coins. Ren immediately ordered the distribution of 100 gold coins to each soldier and arranged for the rest to be sent back to Iceland. With his own guards taking control of the defenses, he could finally start reinforcing the city's infrastructure. Selena, preparing to return to Iceland, expressed gratitude for Ren's assistance. But more than anything, she wanted to understand how he could use batteries without magic. Intrigued by her curiosity, Ren assured her that he'd explain everything in detail on their way back. Pleased with the answer, Selena didn't waste a second, pulling him into the carriage, eager to learn more. Just as they were about to depart, Malcolm rushed toward them, his face filled with urgency. Without hesitation, he delivered the news. Eldric had seized control of Aislan. Selena's eyes widened in shock, but Ren merely smiled. Eldric had finally made his move. Selena, still processing the situation, grew anxious. With all the Mage Association's forces away, there would be no reinforcements from within the city. Suppressing the rebellion would be near impossible. But Ren remained unfazed. From the moment Eldric had chosen to betray him, his fate had already been decided. Ren led his forces toward Iceland, the tension in the air thick as they approached the city gates. The walls loomed over them, sealed tight, with Eldric standing at the top, an arrogant sneer stretched across his face. He showed no signs of concern at Ren's arrival, instead mocking him with feigned surprise, pretending to be amused by his presence. Ren, however, wasn't interested in pointless banter. He had a more pressing question. Why had Eldric dared to betray his father? The question hit a nerve. Eldric's face twisted in anger as he unleashed years of pent-up resentment. He had fought alongside Ren's father, risked his life to build this empire. Yet instead of being rewarded, he had been cast aside, exiled to this desolate region with nothing to show for his loyalty. Every plea for reassignment had been ignored. Every request denied. It wasn't just betrayal, it was personal. A group of former warriors stepped forward behind Eldric, men who had also been abandoned by the Empire. They had once served with honor, only to be discarded when their usefulness had run out. With renewed confidence, Eldric declared that this wasn't rebellion, but justice. They weren't traitors. They were reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. Ren, unimpressed, saw through the theatrics. This wasn't about honor. It was another petty power struggle. He made his stance clear. Anyone willing to surrender would be spared. But if they remained within the city walls, they had 3 days before he broke through. Laughter erupted from the walls. The nobles jeered at his audacity, amused by the ridiculous challenge. Iceland was fortified, and taking it down in just 3 days was nothing but a foolish dream. Eldric, emboldened by their confidence, took it further, proposing a bet. If Ren succeeded in breaching the city in 3 days, Eldric would surrender without resistance. But if he failed, he would have to surrender himself. Ren's allies urged caution. There was no need for reckless risks. Reinforcements from the Grand Duke were already on the way. Eldric, however, continued his taunts, goading Ren into accepting the wager. The moment Ren agreed, Eldric triumphantly declared the bet before all present. Then, with a smirk, he casually dropped another piece of information. The Orvis Empire had already received news of his rebellion, and in 10 days, their army would arrive. The implications were clear. Ren had far bigger problems than just breaching Iceland's walls. Ren remained unfazed. He ordered his forces to set up camp outside the city, then retreated to his command tent. Selena, still uneasy, pointed out the obvious. The city's walls were strong, and their forces were limited. Breaching them in 3 days was near impossible. Others suggested retreating south and waiting for the Grand Duke's reinforcements. But Ren had no intention of waiting. His real concern was the incoming Orvis army. Time wasn't on their side. Turning to Leah, he asked about the preparations for gathering firewood and hay. Leah confirmed everything was ready, and added that a lake had been found nearby, just as he requested. Satisfied, Ren gave the next order. The mages were to use ice magic to lower the lake's temperature. Selena, puzzled, questioned the strategy. How could this possibly take down Iceland's walls? But Ren was confident. The walls wouldn't last 3 days. As dawn broke, Ren led his troops to the city gates. Instead of siege weapons, his soldiers carried bundles of firewood and hay. Eldrick, watching from the walls, found the sight baffling. When the soldiers reached the base of the walls, they dumped the firewood and retreated. Confused murmurs spread among Eldrick's ranks. His men speculated that Ren planned to set the walls on fire, but the very idea was ridiculous. Stone couldn't burn. Frustrated by their stupidity, Eldrick slapped a soldier across the face for even suggesting it. Before he could dwell on it further, another soldier interrupted, shouting in alarm. Flames had begun to spread. Eldrick scoffed at the spectacle. Did Ren truly think fire could damage stone walls? He dismissed any concerns, refusing to waste magic or arrows on something so absurd. In 3 days, he would make Ren regret this foolish stunt. For now, he simply watched, confident that victory was already his. Eldrick basked in his supposed victory, convinced that Ren's forces had wasted 2 days burning the city walls for nothing. While he indulged in celebration, a panicked subordinate rushed in, reporting that the enemy had stopped their assault. Eldrick, still filled with confidence, dismissed the concern, assuming Ren had exhausted his resources. He laughed, declaring that the foolish boy was about to surrender. Gathering his allies, he prepared to witness Ren's humiliating defeat firsthand. At the battlefield, Eldrick stood atop the city walls, arms crossed, looking down at Ren's army with smug amusement. He taunted Ren, expecting the young lord to finally admit defeat. But instead of yielding, Ren remained cold and unshaken, issuing a final warning. Surrender or die. Eldrick, amused by the empty threat, reminded Ren of their wager. If the walls remained standing by sundown, Ren would be forced to submit. The nobles standing beside him joined in, jeering at the so-called genius who had backed himself into a corner. Ren remained unfazed. Taking a deep breath, he gave a simple command. At his signal, Selena, the most powerful mage under his command, floated into the sky, hands raised as the air around her crackled with energy. A deafening boom followed as lightning coiled and surged, the battlefield trembling under her power. The oppressive tension thickened as dark clouds gathered above, swirling ominously. Then, in a single motion, she released her spell. A monstrous bolt of lightning roared down from the heavens, but instead of striking Eldrick directly, it slammed into the walls beneath him. For a moment, silence followed. Eldrick, confused, let out another mocking laugh. Had Selena missed? Had all that posturing been for nothing? His confidence swelled once more, declaring the attack a pathetic joke. Then, the sky darkened further. Thunder rumbled in relentless waves, and an unnatural storm erupted. Within moments, a torrential downpour drenched the battlefield. Eldrick's smirk faltered. Something felt wrong. Before he could process the situation, Ren's forces sprang into action. Soldiers rushed toward the city walls, not with siege weapons, but with buckets filled to the brim with ice water. As the storm continued to rage, Selena, drained from her efforts, nearly collapsed, but Ren caught her before she fell. He hadn't expected her to be capable of altering the weather itself. She looked to him with concern, doubting whether his plan would work. Ren, calm as ever, assured her that everything was proceeding as intended. Leah, watching from a distance, suddenly shouted in alarm. By then, the soldiers had reached the walls, pouring the icy water over the searing hot stone. Instantly, dense clouds of steam hissed into the air. A strange sound echoed, a sharp, eerie cracking. Small fractures began to creep along the once impenetrable walls, spreading like veins of glass under pressure. Eldrick's confidence crumbled alongside the structure he had trusted. Panic seized him as he watched the cracks deepen, spreading faster than anyone could react. His nobles, equally horrified, shouted in disbelief. Then, with a deafening explosion, a massive section of the fortress wall shattered. The very ground beneath Eldrick and his forces collapsed, sending soldiers and nobles alike plummeting into the rubble. For a moment, even Ren's army stood frozen in stunned silence. No one had expected the fortress to fall apart so violently, so completely, but Ren wasted no time. He immediately ordered his forces forward. With their weapons drawn, his soldiers surged into the city. Any who surrendered would be spared. Those who resisted would be cut down without mercy. The sudden destruction shattered the morale of Eldrick's troops. Most threw down their weapons, choosing survival over futile resistance. Victory was now inevitable. Selena, still in shock, muttered in disbelief. Even with all her power, she wasn't sure she could have caused such devastation. How had Ren done it? He, on the other hand, remained composed, urging her not to overthink it. The battle was over. It was time to return home. Meanwhile, beneath the rubble, Eldrick, battered and barely conscious, clawed his way free. He had never suffered such a humiliating defeat, but his mind clung to one last, desperate hope. If he could escape and hold out until the Orvis Empire's northern army arrived, he still had a chance to survive. But as he struggled to his feet, a shadow loomed over him. 3 nobles stood before him, their expressions cold and calculating. One of them stepped forward, voice dripping with mockery. They weren't ready to die just yet. But for Eldrick, survival was no longer an option. After securing the city and crushing the last of the rebel forces, Ren led his army through the gates of Iceland. The citizens erupted into cheers, praising his victory. The seemingly impenetrable walls had crumbled in just 3 days, and miraculously, his army suffered no major casualties. The entire city marveled at his brilliance. Selena, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, flew to Ren's side, pressing him for an explanation. How had he managed to bring down the fortress so effortlessly? Ren sighed, realizing she wouldn't stop until she got an answer. He briefly explained the principle of thermal expansion, describing how extreme heat followed by rapid cooling had caused the walls to crack apart. But as soon as the words left his mouth, Selena's expression turned blank. The concept was completely foreign to her. Amused, Ren assured her he would explain in detail later, after finishing some unfinished business. Near the ruined section of the city wall, a weak voice called out for mercy. A disheveled noble lay on the ground, pleading for his life. Ren's gaze hardened as he recognized the man, one of the traitors who had sided with Eldrick. More voices chimed in, each noble scrambling to shift blame, insisting they had been deceived and had planned to turn against Eldrick all along. They begged for mercy, offering their wealth in exchange for their lives. Ren remained silent, his expression unreadable. When one of them tried to reason with him, questioning how he could expect loyalty in the future if he punished them so harshly, Ren simply laughed. People weren't loyal to leaders, they were loyal to their own interests. Without hesitation, he ordered them to be captured. Their fate would be decided later. Meanwhile, at Eldrick's mansion, panic had taken over. Eldrick, drenched in sweat, frantically begged a masked man for help. Ren had breached the city walls, and escape was their only option. The masked man, startled by the news, demanded an explanation. How could a fortress collapse so easily? Eldrick stammered, recounting how Ren had burned the walls for days and then poured cold water on them, shattering them instantly. The masked man clenched his fists in frustration, refusing to believe such a simple method could destroy a city's defenses. It had to be magic. But there was no time for debate. Eldrick, on the verge of panic, urged him to teleport them away before Ren arrived. The masked man hastily began casting a spell, unfurling a teleportation scroll. However, before he could complete the incantation, a voice interrupted. Calm, steady, and laced with amusement. Ren had arrived. Eldrick froze in terror as Ren stepped into the room. His escape had left the city defenseless, allowing Ren's forces to take control without resistance. Ren's gaze shifted toward the masked man, his tone mocking. Was he hiding a scar? Or was he simply too ugly to show his face? The masked man's composure cracked, but instead of lashing out, he scoffed, warning Ren that his victory would be short-lived. The Orvis Empire's army was already on its way. With the city walls destroyed, Ren had only hastened his own downfall. Without wasting another second, the masked man resumed his incantation. But Ren was quicker. Leah moved instantly, flicking a dagger toward him. The blade missed its mark by inches, grazing the edge of his mask. The mask shattered, revealing his face for the first time. Leah's eyes widened slightly in recognition, while the man's gaze burned with hatred. Before Ren could react, the spell activated. The masked man vanished, taking Eldrick with him. Only his voice lingered, filled with venomous promise. He would return. Leah clenched her fists, frustration evident in her stance. She had been too slow. Ren, however, remained calm. He had expected Eldrick to have an escape plan, though what troubled him now was the masked man's true identity. Leah, regaining her composure, revealed what she knew. The man was Ravenclaw Eldwin, the true head of the Eldwin family. Unlike his father, who had been executed, Raven had abandoned his clan and defected to the enemy years ago, aligning himself with Grand Duke Sorin. Ren frowned at the revelation. This was no ordinary noble. This was a man with both power and influence, and now he had a personal grudge. Selena suddenly interrupted, reporting that while the city was under control, the Orvis Empire's army was closing in. With the walls in ruins, there was no way to hold back an invasion. Ren, however, remained unfazed. He had already planned for this. Soon after, he summoned the people of Iceland to the town square. Selena assumed he intended to reassure them, to prevent panic. But as he stepped onto the platform and spoke into a sound amplification device, his words sent a wave of fear through the crowd. The Orvis Empire's army would arrive in just a few days. Gasps and murmurs filled the square, quickly escalating into terrified cries. Some people trembled, others broke into panicked shouts. Chaos spread like wildfire. Selena, utterly shocked, turned to Ren in disbelief. What was he doing? Was he trying to incite mass panic? What was his plan? The moment Ren revealed that the Orvis Empire was preparing to attack, chaos erupted throughout the square. The people of Iceland, who had just survived a rebellion, were now staring down another war. Fear spread quickly. Some citizens were already thinking about gathering their valuables and fleeing the city, while others hesitated, unwilling to abandon the security and prosperity they had gained under Ren's leadership. Selena, clearly alarmed by Ren's approach, pulled him aside. She believed he had acted recklessly. Announcing an incoming invasion like this would only drive people into panic. Ren frowned, confused by her concern. In his view, soldiers didn't need to be calm. Only their commanders did. Soldiers fought better when driven by emotions, not logic. His response only left Selena more bewildered, unable to understand his reasoning. Rather than explaining further, Ren turned toward the restless crowd, pulling out a scroll and amplifying his voice. He declared that the Orvis Empire had sent him a message, one that mocked the people of Iceland as cowards and fools, unworthy of defending their own land. According to them, Ren should abandon the city and run while he still could. A heavy silence fell over the square. Then, the tension snapped. Furious shouts erupted from the crowd, citizens raging over the insult. Every year, the Orvis Empire had exploited them, stealing their grain. This time, they would not run. They would fight. Ren smiled. He had them exactly where he wanted. He pressed further, questioning whether they truly were cowards and fools, or if they were ready to stand and defend their homeland. The people roared in response, their anger flaring into determination. They would fight to the death, one soldier for one enemy, two if they could manage. With their spirits ignited, Ren made his final move. If they had the courage to stand and fight, he promised he would lead them to victory. The square erupted into cheers, their fear now replaced by a desperate, unshakable resolve. Later that night, as the city prepared for war, Ren sat in his office, the candlelight flickering over the battle maps spread across his desk. Leah entered, suggesting he take a break, offering him a cup of tea. Ren smiled, accepting it, but there was no time to rest. If he didn't come up with a solution before the Orvis Empire's army arrived, Iceland would fall. Leah frowned. Hours earlier, he had stood before the people with unshakable confidence, yet now he seemed deeply concerned. Ren sighed, placing his teacup down. That confidence was a necessary illusion. Without it, the people would have fallen into chaos. If panic took hold, not only would the city be lost, but even an orderly evacuation would be impossible. Fear turned people into something worse than enemies. It made them unpredictable. Leah's worry deepened. She suggested that they flee the city quietly, taking Ren to safety before things spiraled out of control. Her concern touched him, but he shook his head. That wasn't an option. He had already ordered Malcolm and Selena to oversee the evacuation of children, the elderly, and the weak. They weren't giving up yet. Ren's eyes flickered toward a notebook on his desk, one labeled Blue-Black Magic Oil. He wasn't familiar with the substance, nor did he know if it was dangerous. He turned to Leah, handing her the book, asking if she recognized it. Leah hesitated before recalling that it was a type of flammable liquid, often used in witches' rituals. Ren's mind clicked into place. A highly flammable liquid? That sounded eerily similar to petroleum. In nature, petroleum varied in color: red, gold, black, even transparent. Its appearance determined by its resin and asphalt content. If this magic oil was anything like petroleum, then he had just found the key to turning the tide of war. Without hesitation, he ordered Leah to take him to the city's warehouse, where records indicated the substance was stored. Upon arrival, he instructed the servants to search for any barrels containing the black-green magic oil, warning them to keep it away from fire. He was certain that if it was stored in barrels, it was being preserved for some purpose. As they waited, Ren's gaze swept across the warehouse. Among the piles of gold ingots and other treasures lay the taxes Eldrick had hoarded from the people of Orvis over the years. Once this crisis was over, that fortune would be the foundation for Iceland's industrial transformation. If he could establish steam engines, the city's development would accelerate beyond anything the kingdom had ever seen. Soon the servants returned, rolling out several large barrels. Ren's heart pounded with anticipation. If these barrels contained what he suspected, then the city was saved. He rushed forward as the first barrel was pried open. Inside was exactly what he had hoped for. Iceland wouldn't fall. Not now. Not ever. Meanwhile, in the Orvis Empire's military camp, Count Castile sat inside his command tent, his expression unreadable as Eldrick and Ravenclaw Eldwin stood before him, their faces pale with anxiety. Raven spoke first, apologizing for their failure. Castile wasn't interested in excuses. He had expected incompetence, but losing an entire city in 3 days was beyond disgraceful. Eldrick, terrified, scrambled to defend himself, blaming Ren's use of forbidden magic to destroy the walls. Without it, they could have held out until Orvis's army arrived. Castile's eyes narrowed slightly. If forbidden magic had been used, then Ren's father must have sent a powerful mage to aid him. Ravenclaw Eldwin, however, reassured him that a forbidden spell couldn't be used repeatedly in a short period. Furthermore, with Iceland's walls destroyed, the city couldn't be defended for long. This was their perfect chance to attack. Castile scoffed, unimpressed. He didn't need their advice. He was not as incompetent as them. There was nothing more to discuss. Raven and Eldrick were no longer useful. They would return to Orvis and wait. Raven's expression darkened. This entire campaign had been planned together with Castile. Why was he suddenly being cut out? Castile didn't answer immediately. Instead, he retrieved a scroll and tossed it onto the table in front of Raven, his expression contemplative. Raven hesitated before picking it up, his unease growing. As he unrolled the parchment and read the contents, his entire body tensed in disbelief. The letter was a formal declaration, stating that the war had been instigated solely by Ravenlock's personal vendetta. It detailed how his actions had caused needless bloodshed and suffering. Castile, as a man of peace, sought to end the conflict and, as a demonstration of goodwill, had ordered Raven's capture. By offering Raven as a prisoner, the Orvis Empire hoped to restore peace. Raven's hands shook with rage. His voice trembled as he accused Castile of betrayal. But before he could react, Castile's expression turned cold. Without hesitation, he ordered his men to arrest Ravenclaw Eldwin. The masked man fought back furiously, roaring in defiance, but it was pointless. The soldiers seized him, dragging him out of the tent. His screams echoed through the camp, his resistance utterly powerless. Eldrick stood frozen, his body trembling. He had aligned himself with the wrong side. If he didn't escape now, he would share Raven's fate. Castile's gaze slowly shifted to him, eyes sharp and unreadable. The Count leaned back in his chair and, in a quiet but menacing tone, asked how he should deal with him. Eldrick's legs buckled. He fell to his knees, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't useless. He had a secret, one that could elevate Castile's position even higher within the Orvis Empire. At that, Castile's interest was piqued. Eldrick's life, for now, was spared. But what secret could be worth his survival? Inside the grand chamber of the Lord's mansion in Thurland, Priscilla sat reading a letter, her usual warmth fading as her expression darkened. The letter was from Leah, detailing the treachery unfolding in Iceland. The mere mention of Ren's name had filled her with nostalgia, but as she absorbed the contents, nostalgia turned to fury. Without hesitation, she ordered Gwen to summon Valus Holker immediately. Valus arrived shortly after, kneeling before her with confusion and unease. He had no idea why she was so enraged. When Priscilla accused his family of treason, his face paled. His breath caught in his throat. Desperately, he tried to refute the claim, insisting that House Holker had no reason to betray her, especially after she had helped secure their trade routes. Without a word, Priscilla flung the letter at him. The contents detailed how Eldrick had allied himself with Grand Duke Castile of the Orvis Empire, conspiring with various nobles in Aislinn, including General Caesar Holker of the Border Army. Thanks to Ren's tactics, Caesar had already been captured and executed. However, Leah warned that the rest of House Holker might also be involved, urging Priscilla to remain cautious. As Valus read, his hands trembled, cold sweat forming on his brow. He swore it was all Caesar's doing, not his family's. He had even written to Caesar personally, commanding him to follow Ren's orders. He pleaded for her to investigate the matter carefully, vowing that House Holker had no intention of betrayal. Priscilla studied him closely, scrutinizing every twitch and flinch. He didn't seem to be lying. After a tense silence, she considered the possibility that this was Caesar's treachery alone. Seeing her hesitation, Valus fell prostrate, begging for a chance to prove his family's loyalty. Desperate to secure their standing, he proposed sending his only daughter, Rosalind, to lead troops in support of Ren against the Orvis Empire's army. Priscilla weighed the risks. Rosalind was young, still in training at the Knight Academy. If anything happened to her, House Holker would lose its only heir. But Valus insisted, swearing that without Priscilla's support, his family would already be ruined. Finally, Priscilla relented, but remained cautious. Once Valus left, she ordered Gwen to have Rosalind secretly monitored. If she showed any signs of betrayal, she was to be executed on the spot. Meanwhile, outside Iceland, Eldrick and Grand Duke Castile stood atop a distant cliff overlooking the city. Eldrick confirmed that this was indeed Iceland, adding that as long as they broke through, the city would be Castile's. Gazing down at the fortress, Eldrick noticed that Ren had used emergency magic to repair the walls and even dug a trench for added defense. Castile, however, laughed at the effort. Wasting valuable mana just to reinforce walls was a foolish decision. If Ren's mages had any strength left, perhaps they could hold out. But now, they had drained their reserves on pointless fortifications. Eldrick hesitated. With the walls repaired, wouldn't that make their assault more difficult? But Castile dismissed his concerns. Iceland had no natural defensive advantages, just open plains with a small river. That wouldn't stop an army, and since Ren's mages had wasted their mana, they wouldn't have the strength to resist an all-out attack. Eldrick immediately praised Castile's foresight, stroking the Grand Duke's already inflated ego. However, one of Castile's knights suggested an alternative. Instead of a direct assault, they could surround the city and starve it out. The suggestion was met with icy disapproval. Castile saw it as an insult, implying he lacked the strength to take the city by force. The knight quickly knelt in apology, clarifying that he merely wanted to minimize casualties. But Castile had no interest in caution. He intended to crush Iceland outright. He then ordered a mage to accompany him to the city, convinced that his mere presence would terrify Ren into surrendering. Inside his office, Ren was preoccupied with an unfinished task, training 5 individuals with high attributes. Half a month had passed, yet he hadn't had time to find suitable candidates. As he brainstormed solutions, Leah entered. reporting that Grand Duke Castile had arrived outside the city with a mage, demanding to meet him. Shortly after, Ren appeared at the top of the city walls. The soldiers bowed respectfully, their faces tense with concern. Above them, Castile burst into laughter, his voice booming as he prepared to make his declaration. But before he could finish, Ren cut him off with a mocking remark, loudly questioning whether this fool was truly Grand Duke Castile. Laughter rippled through the soldiers. Even Leah nodded, confirming with a straight face that, yes, this idiot was indeed Castile. The Grand Duke's expression twisted with rage. His fists clenched, veins bulging as he seethed at the disrespect. His voice trembled with fury as he reminded Ren that even his father would never have dared to address him in such a manner. But Ren remained unfazed. With an air of complete indifference, he demanded to know why Castile had come to the Western Territories. Having completely lost his composure, Castile roared that he had come to offer Ren a final chance. Surrender, and Aislinn would be spared from bloodshed. Ren's smirk widened, his voice dripping with disdain. He had an offer of his own. If Castile wished to avoid dying here, he and his army should retreat immediately. The tension in the air thickened. The battlefield was set. The only question now was who would make the first move. High above the battlefield, Castile seethed with rage at Ren's demand that he withdraw his troops. To him, this was pure arrogance. He saw Ren as nothing more than a child playing at war, completely unaware of his place. Pointing down at the city walls, Castile declared that he had brought an army of 100,000 men. If Ren wanted to avoid a gruesome death, he had only one choice: surrender immediately. Ren, however, looked completely uninterested. He barely stifled a yawn before turning to Leah, casually instructing her to silence Castile's rambling. Leah nodded, lifting the hem of her dress slightly to reveal several small daggers strapped to her legs. Without a moment's hesitation, she plucked one and sent it soaring toward Castile. The sudden attack threw the mage standing beside Castile into a panic. He surged forward, hurriedly casting a protective barrier, but Leah's precision was deadly. The small dagger tore through the barrier like paper, slicing across Castile's face. A thin line of blood trickled down his cheek. For a moment, the Grand Duke was frozen in disbelief. Then, pure hatred ignited in his eyes. He had come to intimidate Ren, yet he was leaving humiliated. His fury burned hotter than the sting on his face, and for the first time, he truly wanted Ren dead. But Ren remained unfazed. His voice was calm, almost bored. He simply warned Castile that next time, Leah wouldn't miss. Castile trembled with rage, but there was nothing he could do. His chance at asserting dominance had failed. Clenching his fists, he turned and stormed off with his men. Only when they disappeared into the distance did Ren drop his smirk, his expression turning serious. Turning to Selena, he gave the order. The Orvis Empire would attack soon. They had to be ready. Back at his command post, Castile's fury was palpable. His knights hesitated, unsure whether to address the wound on his face. When one of them finally voiced concern, Castile waved him off. The injury was nothing. It was the insult that stung. He wasted no time in issuing his next command. They would attack immediately. He wanted Ren dragged out of that city and brought to him in chains. One knight cautiously stepped forward, suggesting that the army rest first. After all, they had marched for 3 days straight, and attacking now without preparation would put them at a disadvantage. Siege weapons still needed assembling, and a proper bridge had to be built over the river. Castile's response was immediate and violent. He stormed toward the knight and delivered a vicious punch to his face. How dare he question his orders? He roared at his men, demanding to know if 3 days of marching had already exhausted them. Did they even consider themselves soldiers of the great Orvis Empire? Despite the pain, the knight forced himself to speak, insisting that even if the soldiers were willing to fight, rushing the attack without preparations was a mistake. The other knights nodded in agreement, but Castile refused to listen. He was convinced that Ren would be expecting them to wait. If they struck now, they could catch the enemy off guard. Though some of the officers recognized Castile's logic, they also knew the exhaustion of the troops couldn't be ignored. But the Grand Duke was beyond reasoning. His mind was set, and he immediately ordered the attack preparations to begin. Meanwhile, in the Orvis camp, soldiers had just finished setting up their tents, relieved that they could finally rest. After 3 days of grueling marching, exhaustion was evident in every step they took. One soldier groaned, mumbling that he was going to collapse from sheer fatigue. Another sighed, regretting ever thinking army life wouldn't be this tiring. Just then, a soldier grinned and spoke up. He had seen something interesting. The others, too tired to play guessing games, snapped at him to just say it. His grin widened. He had spotted someone slaughtering a sheep, which could only mean one thing. A proper meal was finally on the way. For a brief moment, morale lifted. After 3 hellish days, a good meal was exactly what they needed. But their hope was quickly crushed when a commander arrived, his voice stern as he barked out new orders. The soldiers were to assemble immediately. The attack on the city was about to begin. Stunned silence followed. One brave soldier hesitated before stepping forward, daring to ask if they could at least eat before battle. The commander sighed, understanding their frustration. But there was no choice. Castile had given the order. No more arguing. Everyone was to prepare for battle. With weary bodies and heavy hearts, the soldiers obeyed. Not long after, the Orvis army emerged outside Iceland, their massive numbers kicking up a thick cloud of dust. Their shouts echoed across the battlefield as they charged toward the city walls. But their first major challenge was the wide river separating them from the city. Inside the fortress, Ren stood atop the walls, watching the enemy forces closely. A soldier approached and respectfully asked if they should begin firing arrows. Ren didn't respond immediately. Instead, he continued to observe. Something was strange. The Orvis soldiers struggled to cross the rushing waters, their movements sluggish and disorganized. Something about them seemed off. After a moment of thought, he turned to his men and asked if any of them had prior experience fighting against the Orvis army. A veteran soldier immediately stepped forward, confirming he had fought them before. Ren gestured beyond the walls. "Look at them. Do they seem weak to you? Or have the people of Orvis always been this scrawny?" The soldier studied the scene carefully before answering. Based on his experience, these were likely recruits. But something else stood out. They looked starved. Ren narrowed his eyes. An army marching to war without food? That made no sense. The soldier hesitated before voicing two possible explanations. The first, their food supply had run low, forcing them into battle while malnourished. The second, something far more sinister. Ren prompted him to continue. The soldier took a deep breath before revealing his theory. Castile could be using these recruits as disposable pawns, sacrificing them to drain Iceland's defenses, forcing them to waste arrows and resources before the real attack even began. Hearing this, Ren's expression darkened. His fists clenched in anger. He muttered almost to himself, "And their king allows this? Aren't these soldiers also citizens of the Orvis Empire?" The soldier sighed. Few nobles cared for their people the way Ren and his father did. Most, like Castile, viewed soldiers as nothing more than tools to be thrown away. Ren remained silent, deep in thought. If Castile was willing to sacrifice his own men without a second thought, then there was no reason to show him mercy. The same soldier spoke again, pointing out that with their current supply of arrows, they could easily wipe out these recruits. He waited for Ren's command, but instead of giving the order, Ren smirked. "Don't shoot." The soldiers around him froze, staring in shock. What was Ren planning? Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.